So given that kind of a scenario, there are certain things we know and certain things we don't know. What we do know for sure is that we do not know all there is to know about the behavior of this virus. And we do not know how this behavior, how this virus is going to behave in the population that is within our country, within our city, and within our community. So the onus is on us. The onus is on us, the population that comes within LUMS's boundary walls, that comes within LUMS's jurisdiction. We are a population that can take on this responsibility, that at least our behavior, we have control over our own behavior, and at least our behavior, we will behave in a fashion which will be protective for our own selves and for the people who are around us, because we are a community. And for that, this is the step that LUMS has taken. LUMS is a school that you are coming to. It is one of the leading, if not the leading, management schools in the country. So they are demonstrating to you how to manage a crisis of this nature. This is just wonderful to see the live demonstration of an academic institution that is so much in sync with the problems of your country. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to participate in that, to contribute to this, and to learn from this. I personally think that going forward, if we, and I'll just take this last minute to make this comment, that going forward, and of course, as Dr. Ali Khan mentioned, I am in the process, I have the responsibility, and I take that very seriously in the process of recommending to the senior university administration, the options that they need to follow because their objective is that the university be open to the students and this be a fulfilling and a productive experience for you. But it cannot be a fulfilling and productive experience if there is confusion, if you are likely to get sick, if you are likely to make other people sick. The university wants to give you that experience in a sustained and a safe manner. So I will make those recommendations to the university. We will have very detailed SOPs. We will have very detailed protocols. We will try and make different segregated attempts at protecting people, mitigating the harm, enhancing and helping people to be productive. But for that, we need to be kind to each other. We need to be supportive of each other. I request the students to keep this in mind, that the faculty is completely and absolutely on your side. They want you to do well. They want you to go forward and have the experience that you have. There is a poem by Zehra Nigah, and it doesn't come back to me, but the gist is, and I'm sure the poets among you will remember, she says that jab jungle mein aag lagti hai, and I'm mangling the words, but she says jab jungle mein aag lagti hai, to sher, bakri, bheriya, khargosh, बैल, तोता, मैना सब एक लकड़ी के तख्ते पे बैठ के और पानी में से एक दूसरे को गुजारते हैं. So this is akin to that. This is like a forest fire. This virus has demonstrated, has decimated, like the forest fire. It has decimated the vulnerable. That means the old trees have already burnt down, and now the young people have more immunity, have more resistance. But still, as a community, we need to be kind and to be helpful and to be supportive of each other. So I will stop here. Thank you very much again for this opportunity to speak to you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samia and Dr. Ali Khan. So now I will be giving the floor to Amar Shahid, who is a senior on SDSB. But before I do that, I just want to clarify that the students, you can submit your questions in the Q&A box that is down in the bottom of your screen, and we will be looking at those. My co-host Maida Tahir and Momna Rasool are going through them, and we have selected and finalized, shortlisted the questions that you guys have submitted. So if any of those questions are not overlapping and duplicating, then we will be asking the panel here those questions. So you can submit your questions, and we will be looking at them and making sure if they're not duplicated, then we'll be asking them to the whole panel. But yes, the floor is now open for Dr. Amar, Amar to speak.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Dr. Khan. Thank you, Ms. Altaf. And also welcome to the LUMS community. We're very, very happy to have you on board, ma'am. It is an absolute honor. I'd just like to begin by explaining, I think, the student perspective to the administration as to why we've wanted this open house and how it's been for us these past couple of months, right? And we obviously appreciate all of the efforts that you've been making, and we thank you for everything that all of you have been doing for us, right? So ever since this pandemic has hit, obviously everyone has had their own issues. We've had ours. There have been shared issues, and you've had your own sets of them as well, right? I think the issue for us is along two lines. Number one, it's about the central issue of reopening campus, and if we are to do that, how to do that, or if you're not to do that, why not, and how do we proceed with that? That is one side. But the other side is also about how there has been a lack of communication, at least the way that the student body has perceived this from the administration, right? During the summer, we received an email of LUMS transitioning to a completely online fall semester. We were promised a number of things about more details about how that would happen. But unfortunately, we received no more details after that, right? We had to wait an entire month, after which a student sent out an email to which we were given some responses. But during that period of time, we received no updates as to how the courses would work, as to how the revised assessments that we were being told about were going to take place, right? And this creates obviously a sense of confusion within your student body. This is not an easy, with all of the other things going on, with all of the other stresses of life in this situation, that is not something that students want to be dealing with. Right. Apart from that, so even after that happened, we've been asking for an open house to sort of discuss this issue and see if we could come to a middle ground as to, what can be done about it. Can we have a phased opening? If we can't, can we at least try and understand why the administration has, taken the step of completely shifting to an online system, right? And there was a massive, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know how the administration was thinking about this. And since that email, since the first time we asked for an open house to discuss this, it has been in a month, and today is when we get an open house. And we thank you all for taking out the time for that. But please do try and understand from a student's perspective, going by with this amount of time, having that, that sense of ambiguity as to, yaar, ho kya raha hai? What is going on? Main kya karunga? Mera agla, as a senior, I don't know how my last year LUMS is going to look like. I've planned so many things from the start of all of this. Mujhe nahi pata wo kaise hongi, right? So this is a massive issue that and as Dr. Ali mentioned, being in a confrontational stance is not something we like. I understand that this is how it might have evolved, right? But believe us, that is not what we're trying to achieve. The only thing is that when there has been such a lack of communication, even though we have tried on our part at least, I'm sure we could have done better as well, right? And we're open to that. But you do have to understand that communication is always a two-way thing. And we felt that there was a lack of it from the administration's part, which is why we had to resort to certain other measures to, to try and get your attention. But anyway, that being said, just a final stance on that also is the idea that with a lack of communication, there's also been a sense of ambiguity. We've continuously been told, that the situation is being monitored. We will open campus when we can. We're doing what we can. But apart from these, general sorts of statements, we don't know the specificities of what is going on. And that's a little bit of an issue for us, because then people say things like, "Acha, hum log ye committees kaam kar rahi hain," but the question then becomes, "Ke kya kaam kar rahi hain?" Because very frankly speaking, the results of those we never see, right? And this isn't just happening for the first time. This typically happens at LUMS bahut pehle bhi, but I'll leave all of those things out. But the issue then becomes कि वही हमें पता नहीं, ये कह तो रहे हैं कि कुछ हो रहा है, लेकिन हमें क्यों नहीं नजर आ रहा, right? And obviously that creates a sense of panic amongst us. So that's one thing. But within the issue itself, we absolutely agree with what you're saying, and I'm very happy that we have, in the LUMS administration, people that are so talented and experienced in these fields, that we are able to get reasoned opinions. I think the only issue is that our reasoning of this avenue is a little bit different, right? We understand, given that the situation is still very unclear, we might be in a false sense of complacency. Agreed. We're not saying that. We're not saying कि बस गिरी गए cases. हम ये भी नहीं कह रहे कि हमें campus खोल देना चाहिए और कल को हमें party चला देनी चाहिए because and everyone should just go back to normal. That's not what we're saying. All we are saying is that with a very stringent set of SOPs, with very stringent practices in place, we do not see how this is a problem. We all agree that the virus spreads when there are large congregations, when people are in close contact with each other. But there were a list of SOPs that we tried detailing out for you that prevented all of that. I personally think what we tried to achieve with those was कि यार ये जितना भी थोड़ा सा contact का मसला वो ना हो. And that was very, very minimized. And I understand that even if you have 10 people meeting in such a large environment, the risk does not remain zero, right? A given. But what that does overlook, if the parameter for LUMS is to say that jab tak ke risk zero nahi hota, jab tak ke virus nahi aata, jab tak ke we do not develop herd immunity, when we are essentially overlooking a key number of other variables that affect our lives. COVID is a very massive part of it. But you also have to accept that there are things like people being in toxic households, unconducive environments, people with infrastructure issues. All of these things, they detriment not just our daily lives, but our learning as well, right? And the problem is, okay, then you need to make a trade-off. Okay, how much level of risk are we willing to accept in order to that we may, reduce some other problematic areas in our lives? And for us, that assessment is very different. Right, so we think with a certain set of SOPs, do not open campus to its full capacity, open to whatever capacity we can. We think that's more than what the administration has currently communicated to us. 200-300 people we think is a little bit less, given a very stringent set of SOPs. If people are meeting in the open, if people are making sure to sanitize themselves, to wear masks, to do all of these things, we don't see why this is such an issue. So again, it is the assessment of this issue in terms of how we are making that trade-off between a lot of other things that are detrimental to our lives and to our experience in the university. And iske saath bas ek aur issue ye bhi hai ki, and this is an accompanying issue, and the idea that, and this is why the idea of, the finances got interplayed into all of this, was that we've been off campus for I think 5 months almost now, and let's say that, even fall semester doesn't come online. That creates about 11 months where we don't have access to facilities. There is a significant cost savings on the administration's part. And what students don't understand is that why are we not being given some relief if there are some very obvious cost savings, right? And in fact, we were told, it helps with financial aid and all that, and that's a separate issue. But uske andar bhi we were recently told that NOP students ke stipends cut ho rahe the. So agar hame relief dene ka to, hame relief na dene ka to ye tha ki baki logon ko kisi ko mil jaye, which is again a debatable issue, लेकिन वो भी नहीं अब हो रहा, तो हमें again समझ नहीं आ रही. And you see, this is where the lack of communication also comes in, because we don't know the reasoning for these decisions. तो हमें तो नहीं समझ आ रही क्या होगा, and we reason as to how this happened, and that's how these things spread, right? So I hope I've covered, at least given a good introduction to the issues. I apologize to the students if I haven't been able to do that, but please do let me know if I can do anything more. But this is, I think, the crux of where we're coming from as the student body.
Thank you, Amar. So basically, that's the introduction of the argument from the student side. So we wanted you, the panelists, to understand the perspective of the student side, and I think Amar has put that very eloquently and very nicely. And we hope that that kind of gives you an understanding of what the students are feeling. And now we will be going towards our questions. Momna is sharing the screen, and you will be able to read the questions, and the students can also see what the questions are. And yes, I think the screen sharing has started. Yeah. So so basically, can we go to the first slide? Yeah. So so to explain this to the students, so we divided this questions into different themes. Right. So initially, we're going to start with questions that the students have asked about the decision to keep the campus closed. Why did the administration come to this? The students' concerns with these decisions, and trying to understand it better and their concerns regarding that. We're going to ask questions regarding this. Now, the students who are present here in the attendance, you can also send in your questions in the Q&A, and if we feel like they aren't covered within the question that we're going to already ask, we will be asking those questions right now. So let's go to the first question. So yeah, so this is, I think this would be targeted at either Dr. Ali Khan or Dr. Samia. So basically, one student submitted this question that the WHO and the CDC specify a less than 5% positivity rate and more than 70% hospital capacity for a safe reopening. Pakistan meets both of these criteria. So what benchmark is LUMS trying to fulfill for a safe reopening?
I can respond to that, Dr. Ali, if you with your permission. Yes, yes. The Pakistan meets both of these criteria. I will disagree with this that this statement that Pakistan meets these criteria. You name the hospital that meets this criteria. The Pakistani hospitals are making hospitals COVID compliant does not only mean setting up cubicles and putting in beds over there. the functionality of the hospital, the trained staff, the nursing staff, the monitoring staff, the availability of timely medication, the availability of timely triage, the possibility of upping you up to sending you up to another level. All of those things are part of the making hospital having the capacity to deal with that. I would challenge any of you students. I would challenge you to bring me a hospital, aside from one or two, such as the Aga Khan Hospital and a couple of other hospitals in the country who might be able to meet these criteria. You bring me any of the hospitals that meet that criteria. So just saying this, that it meets those criteria and this is fine, I disagree with that. I think that LUMS is fulfilling these criteria for a safe reopening. LUMS's intention is that, as the student who spoke, I forget his name, he has said that of course there are risks involved. So LUMS's intention, the management's intention, is to identify those risks and to try to manage them to the best of their ability, given the infrastructure and given the constraints in this country. Imagine a scenario where, you know, the risk is, the final risk is that one of the students gets sick, and God forbid, you know, becomes so sick that there is jeopardy to their life. So that has to be managed by LUMS. And on the other hand, the issue is that you have to protect a community of 500 or 700 or a number of people on which there are many people who are vulnerable. So that is a risk also. So the risk basically is that you plan to open in such a fashion that you are able to minimize those risks and to be able to manage them. So that I will stop here and not go into many more details. So.
Okay, so the next question is, so basically this question is that all the other universities in Pakistan, such as IBA, GK, will most likely and are opening due to the disadvantages faced by students in online study. Next slide. So A, while the whole country opens, how would keeping LUMS, a university of 6,000 people, on its busiest day, shut offer much difference? Won't this offer more trouble for students than positives? Any of you can take that question.
Could you read that question again?
So basically, the question is that everything else is opening, and for the students, उनकी family वाले job पे जा रहे हैं, बाहर की चीजें खुली हुई हैं. So how is only keeping LUMS keeping the students safe? The students are asking the negative consequences that they are facing in terms of more difficulty studying and all that. Do the negatives outweigh the positives? That's the question basically.
You know, I can take a crack at it, and then I think Dr. Ali and the VC can respond. I come to it from a perspective of a physician, and for me, you know, what I keep in mind is that your life and the life and health of an individual trumps any other negative consequences. You know, people can lose years, and people can lose semesters, and people can, you know, lose all of that. In the end, if you are alive and well, then there are other opportunities. So that is what LUMS's intention is, to keep you well and to keep you safe and to be able to sustain that over a period of time, because you know well, and everyone will agree, that this virus is here to stay. It is going to be with us for the next year, for the year after that, and possibly the year after that. So if you open the university and some untoward incident happens, what is the option? That the university is going to be closed down for the whole semester? Yes, your people are making decisions to go to their jobs and to do all of that, but then they are making those decisions for their own selves. They are liable to their own selves. And the university, LUMS University, has very generously taken on this liability, that they are making themselves responsible for your well-being. So they have taken that responsibility, and they are taking it very seriously. So won't this offer more trouble for the students than positives? No, I don't think so. I think that university has remarkable faculty that is working very hard to retool and to redo this education experience. I'm not an educationist, so I can't speak to that. But to me, it seems that they are being creative, and that is what is expected from the students also. You know, you are smart kids. You have come to a university, which is one of the very, very difficult universities to get into. You are living through a positive experiment in your country that you would have to deal with maybe in another 5 years, in another 10 years, when you are sitting in positions of authority and power. You have the opportunity in front of you to participate in this and to learn from this very, very special opportunity that you have, rather than worrying about case for negative kya hoga, mera ek saal jaya ho jayega, mera ek. Imagine that कि आपका साल जाया हो गया मगर आप जिंदा और तंदुरुस्त तो है ना. So that is the bottom line for me.
Okay, so I think Dr. Farhat wants to add on this, and then we'll let Amar speak.
Well, okay. So first of all, assalamu alaikum to everybody. I am someone who's just joined LUMS, but I've been part of the deliberation for the last several weeks on this issue. And let me say that I both deeply understand the frustration that students are expressing, and at the same time, I think it's a very difficult sort of task for us to communicate to you the tremendous sort of work that has been going into this whole issue of security of the campus. Perhaps a couple of things that need to be highlighted is that we are thinking about phased, careful, sort of opening with Dr. Samia's help in terms of seeing how many people first we can bring to campus and see how that goes, and then move along, let the data dictate how we go with that. So it's not that we are stubborn and completely refuse to listen to you and are just simply saying we're not going to open the campus. The plans are being developed just as we speak. Dr. Samia has been going around on campus looking, diagnosing the overall situation of the campus and creating a plan that will help us slowly bring some people. Now, who those some people will be also is a very, very difficult question. This is what Dr. Ali Khan had said. So I think just I mean, on the one hand, I can understand the frustration on your part, but on the other hand, I just wish that you could be walking in our shoes for a couple of days to understand how difficult this overall situation has been. And as far as students not being a part of this, may I remind you, the students have been part of the safety committee, I think, from the very beginning, right? They have students representative that has been in that committee. You know, so I take it that we could have done a much better job, perhaps, of communicating, but part of the issue is that there has been so much sort of pressure from students over social media, etc., that I think it's taken away from what we were attempting to do, which is to be very deliberative in trying to sort of move along. And I understand that it, you know, a lot of passions are involved in this because you feel that this is about your life and your future and your you know, education. Just one last thing, and maybe you can. So I am sitting here in the United States. I hope to join you very soon in Pakistan, and the universities here and colleges have taken risk. They have taken this risk because of financial consideration. They wanted students back on campus because they wanted the revenue that generated. They wanted to make sure that the other colleges and universities that they're competing with, they're not losing out by not having on-campus experience. And wherever universities, many universities, they brought the students in, and within 3, 4, 5 days, they had to close down. University of North Carolina did that. Notre Dame University did that. So one of the things that I have appreciated as a relatively outsider who's just joining your community is the fact that LUMS has actually taken an ethical stance, that the security of our community is very important. And in achieving that stance, LUMS is losing money. I think that people keep thinking that somehow closing campus has actually sort of created budget surplus. Perhaps some of my other colleagues can explain that a little bit more, because that's a question that keeps coming up in terms of, why is our fees not reduced, etc. Because you're netting some saving. In fact, there is very little and no savings, but anyway, some of that maybe somebody else can more concretely answer. So just from relatively outsider's perspective, please see this as not something that is easy for the LUMS administration. It has been a very, very challenging task. So I will stop there.
Okay, I think Amar wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, sorry. Right. So I just wanted to, so of course I understand that the university's perspective is safeguarding our lives and, taking that stance. But again, my question then sort of becomes, and I think this is what is in the minds of all of the students as well, very specifically, what does that look like? Like, are we saying that we don't, again, is this a 0% risk tolerance thing? हम बिल्कुल भी बर्दाश्त नहीं करना चाह रहे risk, or is it that there is some level of risk? And if there is some level of risk that we are willing to go with in order to, bring back some people to campus, what is that level of risk? What does it look like? So I guess my question basically here is to say, okay, what does this policy look like? And दूसरी चीज ये भी कि I understand that you're still working on plans on how to bring back people to campus, right? When can we expect as a student body specifics on that? कि हम कितने लोग लेके आना चाह रहे हैं? What are the SOPs going to be? What is the selection criteria? Because I think there are maybe 2 weeks left within fall semester starting again. So it makes sense for a lot of students to be quite worried about that. We've been expecting this to happen for quite some months now, because we've been told bar okay, we're still working on it. So again, when can we expect that these plans will come to light in very specific terms? Itne logon ko leke aana hai humne wapas, this is the criteria, these are the SOPs, this is how the next 3 months will play out. Yeah.
Okay, can I jump in, Abdullah?
Sure, Dr.
Ji, first of all, Assalamu alaikum everybody, and thank you very much specifically to, how many do we have here? Over 884 people. Along with the panelists, I just wanted to acknowledge Abdullah for hosting us and for all the work the Student Council has put in organizing this forum, and for Amar to give a very succinct and excellent summary of how the students are feeling at this point in time. Of course, I'm very much appreciative of my colleagues, in particular, Dr. Ali Khan, who opened the forum by giving you a very comprehensive view of the rationale behind, our thinking. I mean, we should be celebrating and actually congratulating Dr. Sami. I think we're the only university that has appointed at a high level someone with her expertise and her know-how of the local landscape, as well as the regional and international background that she brings. So look, let me make a few points that may be addressing a number of questions, and please, we encourage you to keep asking more and more of these questions. On the question of communication, which I think was a big one that you raised, Amar, I just want you to understand, and this has been tried to be communicated, not as well as perhaps we could have, but in some of the exchanges that we have had on several other related issues, not just on opening of campus. You'll recall we've, since March, when we abruptly realized the world had turned and came back from our midterm break and were asked to disperse, we did communicate about going online and the kind of transitions that were required in doing so. Since then, a number of issues have come up about fees, about summer school. We had, for the first time, laid out 2 semesters of summer schooling, where a lot of the online learning, in fact, would start to reveal itself in improving standards and for faculty members to be able to respond to the concerns students were clearly indicating about workload, about assessments, about the mahol jo aap ghar ka bata rahe the, the distress that people are feeling. We have to make adjustments and respond because we are very much student-centered in the way we teach, and our pedagogical models have changed. And I can talk more about the teaching and learning part, but I'll postpone that for a moment in case people are interested. I'd love to talk about that. We had other issues. We had issues of harassment. We had an open forum about that. We have had issues about fees. We have had a lot of exchanges regarding fees, where we have reduced fees. People keep talking about lab fees. We don't have lab fees. We have a science and engineering fee because that school is simply more expensive in terms of the resources that it requires. And so we have had a science and engineering fee, and we have cut that fee by 30%. We have not increased fees by 13%. That was the plan originally, but we have been responding to a financial crisis as well. By no means, and I will say that unambiguously, is LUMS making money here. In fact, we have cut our budgets to the bone. Never has such budget cutting occurred in the history, I think, of LUMS. We have a new budget model, by the way, for students that I have explained before, which is very much decentralized, where responsibility is given to deans and to directors to come up with budgets, zero-based budgeting. So we start from scratch to see what is the amount that can allow us to sustain minimal operations without, getting rid of or losing any of our faculty and our staff. We've tried to preserve that as well. But let me come back to the question of communication. So when you have all of these ongoing issues and challenges, as people have expressed, the way we make decisions at LUMS is not perhaps the way in which a company makes decisions, or perhaps the way in which other organizations, maybe even other universities, make decisions. What we have is a consensual model of decision making, and that means that we have to consult with a number of different stakeholders, important voices, and most important among those voices are student voices. So in our governance, we have a voice for students to give us their concerns, and we include those as we include the concerns of faculty members, directors, program leaders, deans. Don't forget the trustees, the ones who are overseeing the overall health and well-being of the university. And these people are disparate groups. They're not just sitting there in a COVID situation where we can snap our fingers and have these kinds of discussions, the kind we are having right now, so that we understand their points of view, so that we understand where they're coming from, and then come to a consensus and say, this is the kind of clarity we require in order to make an important decision. For example, like when do we open the university? Opening the university, I think we did decide, we decided before any university decided, I think, that given the data we had, given the circumstances we found ourselves in, we were not going to open the campus. Now let's remember one thing. We have closed the university campus, but there are close to 500 people who come and go. As we speak, there are 165 residents, faculty and families. There's another 45 staff who live there. So there are 200 people who have been living there on campus. Then there are critical workers which were allowed by the government to maintain, people who deliver stuff, people who make sure our equipment is safe, people who look at security, look after utilities and so on. So there is a core group of people who have been living on campus, and while we have tried to devise SOPs and protocols for them, it has been a bumpy ride. It has been difficult. And now, first of all, we didn't have a choice to have students there. I mean, we have to comply with the law, and students weren't allowed on campus. We communicated that. And so I think in terms of the decision to close the university, it was made early. We have consistently said that in our communications, and students have been involved in this communication that we are not opening the campus given the information that we have. You are quite right that we could do better. I mean, I'm the first one to admit that this is probably something we could do a lot better. But we are not responding. This town hall is not because of pressure. This town hall is because we are at a point in time where we can share some good information with you, where we think, we've said to you, we're closely monitoring what is going on the ground, and we'll release to you updates that are meaningful. So what are meaningful updates? Meaningful updates are that we have had, for example, 52 courses taught over the summer with over 1,400 students who have taken those courses. I can tell you that student satisfaction amongst those courses are just as good as offline courses have been, in many cases better, and in many cases worse, but the average teaching effectiveness has been around 4.5, which is not to say that we have suddenly discovered how to teach online, but it is to say that we have made progress since the first time we started teaching online, which was in the spring semester. Now, communication-wise, yes, let's keep on interacting, but please understand that when we have something definitive to share with you that affects you, such as your fees, such as how many students are going to be let in. I think that's a burning question I see again and again. आपने भी पूछा था अभी अमर साहब कि कितने लोग आ रहे हैं, आप हमें exactly बताएं. देखें, मैं आपसे अर्ज कर रहा हूं, as everyone is, that nobody has a crystal ball. What we are thinking about is to say, let's look at the capacity we have. Dr. Samia has been looking at what does it require to support students who get infected on campus. To look at that possibility, how many beds can we provide? For example, do we have to open up the gym and put infected people there? Who is going to feed them? How many people will be required to feed them? Who will monitor the people in terms of testing that is going to go on? How many people will be required to look at oversight in terms of SOPs that are being followed? And if people do get sick, and if we are going to have extensive testing and SOPs, what are the infrastructure requirements that we can allow for? Now, the government has told us that you cannot have more than 30% of your student body who are living in hostels, just because of distancing and other. उन्होंने एक number दिया है. Even if we go by that number, that gives us a ceiling of 600-700 students who can come on campus, right? So if you want a number, that is one number to look at. Now we can say 700 log ko agar hum campus mein laएं, do we have the capacity to take care of them? And the answer right now is no, we do not have the capacity to take care of them. So then we ask the question, how many do we have a capacity to take care of? So we started with, as I think Dr. Khan mentioned, that we are looking at a few hundred people to start off with. And this will be a rolling, the idea is to roll in more people as we get more data by working with a certain group of people. So if, say we let in 200 people, okay? We let in 200 people when, by the way? Only when the campuses are allowed to open. When are they allowed to open? They are allowed to open on the 15th of September. We will be announcing that the school date will be deferred from 7th of September that we had originally thought of to 15th of September. This is one of the reasons we wanted to have a meeting today to start making these announcements that are coming to light in our own knowledge. 15 तारीख को अगर 200 लोग आ जाएं, कौन होंगे वो? Who are the people who are going to come? As you asked very legitimately, what is the criteria that you're going to use? Well, we have been thinking about that. We have looked at and done surveys to see who in our student body has connectivity issues, who simply don't have any internet, are living in remote areas and can't learn. No matter how many devices you send to them, they don't have any access to bandwidth or broadband. So those people are on the list. So we have contacted and found out there are some people in that group who simply cannot be accommodated unless they are on campus. So they will be part of that priority group who we will be inviting to campus. Then we have people who are, critical in terms of some of the work that needs to be done on campus in terms of science and engineering labs, some critical work that has to be done, some graduate students that have been mentioned before. Just as we have a list of students who are in financial distress and require the supports that we can give them on campus that they cannot get, just as we have a group of people who are facing other at risk, who have toxic household issues and so on. Now, if you start looking at these lists, you can see very quickly it's going to exceed something like 100 or 200 people. There are far more people who deserve to come initially than what we are suggesting. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at the first group and say, can we even deal with 100 or 200 people? Do we have support systems for them? Answer, in 3 weeks, yes, we can. Bring in another 200 people. Then look at the data, see if we can, if the students are following SOPs, if the faculty are following SOPs, the staff are following SOPs, and so look at the data. So just to wrap this up, the thinking here is, yes, we are simulating, we are trying to figure out the numbers. We don't have a crystal ball to give you a point in. अगर आप मुझे 3 हफ्ते पहले पूछते ये सवाल, I would not give you these answers. And I don't think we would have had a fruitful conversation about, how many people can safely come to campus with all the data that we have been collecting. But we are at a point in time where we can share with you the kind of information that we are not really partially opening the campus. Everyone's still going to learn online. It's trying to accommodate a critical mass of students, staff, and faculty who we feel we can support under the conditions of providing this assurance that we are taking on their health and safety as the first line of our thinking. I mean, learning is important, but living is more important. And so can we provide at least some assurances that we have strict protocols where we are finding historically we have done very poorly. I mean, we have had smoking rules, very few people obey them. We have drug use, criminal offenses that we have imposed with SOPs. Not all of them get enforced. So it's not that we are going to make this a zero risk environment. By no means can you eliminate zero risk. I'm in Canada right now, about to come back. There are strict protocols about who you can meet, what you can do. Does that eliminate risk? No. It does not. I don't think we are talking about a risk-free world. We're talking about managing risks, as Dr. Samia has pointed out, in a way that requires all hands on board. You can't do it alone. The administration can't just do it. It can make recommendations. The students have to play their role. Faculty have to play their role. So I think you guys have to understand that silence is not a conspiracy that is going on. We have tried to build trust with the students from the day one. If you don't have that trust, we only ask you to participate more so that we can learn from each other. To say that other universities are opening, why aren't you, is to also say, well, why don't we adopt their standards of the way they teach or the way they do research? No, I'm sorry. We're going to adopt the kind of standards that we feel are suitable for LUMS. So this is not a good argument in our minds कि वो कर रहे हैं तो आप भी कर लें. अगर वहां पर बाजार में जाके सब गले मिल रहे हैं, आप भी क्यों नहीं बाजार में जाके गले मिलते हैं? सॉरी, मैं बाजार में जाके गले मिलने के लिए तैयार नहीं हूं अभी. शायद आप हैं. अगर आप हैं तैयार तो ये आपकी जिंदगी है और आप करें. लेकिन हमारे जिम्मेदारी में हम इस तरह काम नहीं करेंगे. We have a moral obligation, we have an ethical obligation, we have a legal obligation, we have a human obligation to be caretakers and gatekeepers of your welfare and your well-being. And we take that very seriously, and we want you to be in this enterprise. And the ones who are making loud noises, as Vice Chancellor, let me please tell you, the Vice Chancellor is not going to buckle under any pressure, because he doesn't operate that way. I don't make decisions by someone just hammering on my head, कि आप ये करें नहीं तो मैं ये कर दूंगा आपके लिए. We'll go to the press club and tell the whole world how lousy LUMS is and blah, blah, blah. This is your right. If you want to go and do it, please do it. But understand, our decision-making doesn't happen by diktat. The Vice Chancellor doesn't sit there on a desk and just unequivocally issue orders to everyone, aap ye kare, aap wo kare. This is an institution of learning where everyone has a say, and we come to a consensus, as I've tried to emphasize again and again. This is what we're trying to do. And we will improve that process thanks to your participation. So keep it up, keep sending us questions, but realize that there is reputational damage that you do when you make false assumptions, not you per se, but some people do. Some people have agendas to bring LUMS down. The more you do that, the more you shoot yourself in your own feet. So think about the bigger picture. There is a big role everyone has to play here. It's very complicated, and there are no black and white answers. So keep that in mind. But given the information we have, I think we have a lot of clarity in what we are doing. And we will continue to be as clear as we can and share the information with you as soon as we can. So I'll stop there. I said a lot more than I wanted to, but I hope I've covered some ground here.
Yeah, so I think you kind of answered the next question that we have, but just for clarification, I'm going to ask again so that people know that we're asking this question. So basically, a lot of students feel, as you said, that there's different levels of risk that people are taking. And a lot of students are weighing their own options, and they feel like going on campus is less risky for them given the conditions that they have at home or in their surroundings. So a lot of students have this question, and that's why I'm posing this here, is why is LUMS thinking about a sort of a hybrid opening, or is there any chance of a hybrid opening where people who feel like they want to be at campus can come at campus and have classes online or in whatever form, and those who feel that they should be who are more risk averse can stay at home and take their classes from home? So is there any sort of discussion going on for a hybrid opening is the question here.
Yes, of course, there is a discussion going on, Harun. Of course, these are stages that you have to come to grips with. But for people to be present on a campus where we have limitations, we have to go through a stage 1 before we go to stage 2 and stage 3. अब आपको डॉक्टर साहब बता रहे हैं, this may go on for a long time. Nobody wants students to be away. Nobody wants them to learn online completely. But what we do want is to give more flexibility and more options, just as you are suggesting. So are we talking about hybrid learning? Yes. Is it going to happen on September 15th? No, it's not. We are not ready for that yet. Are we going to open some classrooms up and see whether we can social distance and teach that way? Yes, eventually we will. If you say to me, what is the date? Tell me how many classrooms, which courses? I can't tell you that right now. We don't have that answer yet, but we will get there. If we're going to live under these conditions, we will adapt to them. Of course, we will have hybrid learning. Of course, we will have some classroom learning. Of course, we will have, but this pre-assumes that we've learned to change our behaviors. To date, we have very little evidence that faculty, and I start with faculty, staff, and students can demonstrate those changed behaviors. This is like, I think Dr. Samia mentioned this in a meeting earlier. This is like going on a journey, let's say with an airline. The minute you are going to apply or even buy your ticket, you have to concede. There are rules of how you fly, how you will be treated through security. And in these days, in COVID times, you have to take tests in many cases. When you enter a country, there are protocols. When you're in the airplane, there are protocols. it's the same thing. It's a good analogy for what's happening now with us. You know, you're on a journey. There are going to be very strict protocols for our own benefit. And if we comply with them, we will increase the numbers. Right now, we have a capacity constraint of 600 people approximately. And we're not going to bring 600 people in because we cannot support them. We simply cannot. We will do it in stages. And you know, to tell you the exact number, who is coming, the exact criteria, is something you have to trust us that we will do well, because we are doing it in your interest. It's not benefiting anybody other than the critical folks who need to be here. We're cognizant of that. As Dr. Khan said, we've been thinking about this since June. But for you to have black and white answers in a complex world that we are in right now, you know, just oversimplifies and makes this into a black and white issue, which it is not.
Thank you, Dr. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give the floor to Ayman Mozam, who is a senior at LUMS, and he's going to be presenting a different point of view from the student side. Ayman, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to thank the VC and everyone at the Student Council who set up the open house. It was extremely important for this to happen. There's a lot of things being said about reopening campus and whatnot, and I think this is clarifying a lot of concerns that we do have. I bring a different point of view. I am part of a group of students who are against any version of reopening being presented by students who claim to represent 80% of the population or reopening ki baat kar rahe hain wo log. They're right, entitled to their opinion, but the figure of 80% seems to originate from this Google form that they had that contained responses from 1,400 students, and just bar the problems with the survey itself, including the fact that it was random nahi tha. It was people self-selecting into the sample itself, plus the kind of questions it was asking, kya aapne kabhi cheating ki hai, kya aapne cheating nahi ki hai. These kinds of things will give you responses that you want to hear. ठीक है, मैंने कभी cheating नहीं की जब semester in class in person था, and I started cheating जब सी चीजें online हो गई थी. I'll get to that in a moment, but first I want to talk about why reopening campus is short-sighted and selfish. ठीक है. First, we've seen the results that reopening in the US has already done. You know, एक हफ्ते के अंदर universities बंद हो रही हैं because of a surge in cases that they've been seeing. At this point, many people will argue कि oh, US और पाकिस्तान का एक बहुत different dynamic है, demographics different हैं, ये सारा कुछ, और पाकिस्तान में cases decline पे हैं. And okay, I'll give you that. Lekin let's then talk about India. India में क्या हो रहा है? India has conducted 835,000 tests as of today. And they've reported 63,000 infections. Pakistan, on the other hand, only conducted 22,000 cases and reported tests and reported 600 cases. ठीक है? Israel में देख लें, एक हफ्ते के अंदर एक phased high school खुला था, and they had to close that down as well because of a surge in cases, according to a paper by Zamir et al. You guys can look that up. ठीक है? Then people argue कि positivity ratio गिर रहा है, so that means, you know, cases are going down, which is right. Cases नीचे जा रहे हैं. But अगर हम यही positivity ratio रखें and we try to, you know, extrapolate the data and see कि अगर हम भी इंडिया की तरह 8 लाख cases test conduct करते हैं, then the number of cases we would have is 22,000. That is similar to what we were seeing back in July, back in June, जब cases were at their peak. ठीक है? चलें वो भी मान लिया कि cases decline पे यूनिवर्सिटी ओपन कर सकती है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन मान गई है इसकी वजह से, फिर क्या करना चाहिए? फिर ये करना पड़ेगा हमें कि the university will have to have an excellent test contained trace mechanism in place, जो अभी नहीं है, पूरे पाकिस्तान में कहीं नहीं है सही तरह से. ठीक है? According to Weiner et al., that is also another paper that's been recently published, you need to have at least nucleic acid के negative tests. Those all cost 8,000 rupees, by the way, and we have to administer them to each student within the first week that they come. Not just to students, आपके पास security guards, MBM staff, faculty, administrative staff, उन सारों को आपने test administer करना है, report to negatives, and then have to let them come in. ठीक है? Who's going to bear that cost? चलें LUMS मान गया, LUMS ने cost bear करनी है, हमने पैसे नहीं देने हैं. Bearing in mind that this is also affecting students from a lower socioeconomic status, जो ये पैसे नहीं दे सकते 16,000 एक टेस्ट के लिए, चलें वो भी दे दिए. फिर हम क्या करेंगे? फिर हमने ये करना है कि हम ताइवान का एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं. Taiwan में there's also been a study that's been conducted जहाँ पे university खोली है, the largest university, the NTU. They were conducting around 2,000 to 3,000 tests institutionally. उनके पास खुद ये capacity थी test conduct करने के लिए, and that capacity is all. और अगर हमने कह दिया चलो LUMS ने भी capacity बना लिया, LUMS has signed a MOU with Chuktai or whatever, and we started conducting these tests as well. चलिए ठीक है, ये भी हमने कर लिया. LUMS में हमने conduct करने होंगे at least 2,000 to 3,000 tests a week because people are going to be in and out of campus. Tests बार-बार होते रहेंगे. And if we just do 2,000 tests a week, that is around 20 to 30% of the current testing capacity of Punjab. ठीक है, पूरे पंजाब में इतने टेस्ट नहीं हो रहे हैं currently speaking than जो हम चाह रहे हैं कि LUMS एक महीने में कर ले. ठीक है. In addition to NTU in Taiwan, they had a very strict policy of test, contain and trace. Again, पाकिस्तान में कहीं भी ये सही तरह से policy नहीं चल रही है. They had to sanitize doorknobs, railings, anything that students touch, और janitorial staff का ही सारा काम था. ठीक है. There also needs to be excellent ventilation in place. और फिर वो बात होती है कि auditoriums में हम classes रखेंगे, बड़े auditoriums में. We all know कि SDSB B3 और 9B2 और ये सारे बड़े auditoriums that are in the basements have very poor ventilation. We've complained to the faculty, to the administration multiple times कि ventilation बहुत ख़राब है, तो हम वहाँ पे classes रख ही नहीं सकते. And these auditoriums are one of the largest auditoriums जहाँ पे हम social distancing के साथ बच्चों को बिठा सकते हैं. Outdoor classes encourage की जा रही हैं कि class sizes 15 के होने चाहिए. हमारे पास 15 के seminar courses में नहीं होती हैं class sizes, and people are expecting कि हम 15 लोगों को classrooms के अंदर बिठा सकते हैं. And when we are planning to bring just 200 students on campus, ठीक है. Zamirat another the same study about Israel, उसके अंदर they found that there were just 35 to 38 students in a class, which is also just half of mandated HSS की requirement. Class areas भी उनके 39 to 40 meter square थे, somewhere around that, और तब भी वो social distancing को enforce नहीं कर पाए थे. How do we expect कि LUMS वो realistically कर पाएगा? ठीक है. अब आपकी बात मान लेते हैं कि चलो ये भी हमने implement कर दिया. Suppose someone has the virus. हमें फिर क्या करना है? Do we have the capacity to take care of that person in situ, or do we have to add burden to an already overburdened healthcare system? हम उनको national लेके जाएंगे जो 5 मिनट दूर है. I have been part of the emergency medical services. I have had to deal with this a lot. Taking students off campus because they're sick is not an easy thing to do, and people who think are sadly mistaken. ठीक है? Our medical center is below par in every way, shape, and form. I have been a regular visitor. We have talked to the administration multiple times that there needs to be a much better medical center in place, लेकिन वो नहीं है. On the other hand, NTU जिसकी मैं बात कर रहा था ताइवान में, they have 5 full-time physicians. They have a physician in charge. They have 2 paramedics. They have 10 nurses. They have a radiological assistant. उनके पास ये सारी चीजें हैं. हमारे पास इतनी कैपेसिटी नहीं है कि हम एक्सरे भी कर सकते हैं बच्चों का लम्स के अंदर. ठीक है. It is not. We are not ready for that kind of system in place. And what about the extra maintenance stuff that needs to be hired and put at risk? And I'm 100% sure कि जितनी हमने cost cutting की है, हमने MBM staff को ही लेके आना है. We'll give them the same kind of terrible contract that we've always given them. और फिर उनकी जाने भी हम दाव पे लगा देंगे. ठीक है? फिर क्या होगा? Do we expect कि हम लोग खुद bathroom साफ करेंगे? Because LUMS has tried that. We've tried to make sure कि hostel के bathroom साफ रहेंगे एक हफ्ते के लिए, janitorial staff नहीं काम करेगा, and that is just impossible. So what will we do? Will we make sure कि वो लोग campus पे रहेंगे, put them away from their families, put them at risk, or would we allow them to leave and then increase the chances of a virus coming in from the outside? ठीक है. किसी की तबीयत खराब हो जाती है, क्या करेंगे? उनको dorm rooms में डाल देंगे to mitigate the risk. फिर उनका कौन ख्याल रखेगा? खाना कौन लाएगा? Medications कौन लाएगा? उनके vitals कौन लेगा? You are putting people at risk at each and every step of the point. This is not fair. ठीक है. और चलें suppose ये भी हो गया, हम social distancing किस तरह करेंगे? Contrary to the survey that was conducted by students, Abdullah, I'm almost done, but I need to say this. This is really important. वो जो सर्वे हुआ था उसके अंदर कहा था कि सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग हम करेंगे, एक गैप होना चाहिए स्टूडेंट्स के बीच में. वो एक सीट की गैप से सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग नहीं होती है. यू नीड एटलीस्ट 3 to 4 सीट्स टू मेक श्योर के सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग हो सकती है. पुअर वेंटिलेशन हो रही है. डे स्कॉलर्स क्या क्या करें? ठीक है. द एंटायर पॉइंट दैट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज वी आर फाइटिंग फॉर द रॉन्ग थिंग हियर. ठीक है. हमें इस बात यहाँ पे लड़ना चाहिए इस बात के ऊपर कि हम फीसें कम करें. People are being overburdened. SSC seniors are being overburdened. SSC जो लोग आ रहे हैं उनको इतना ज़्यादा burden पड़ रहा है. I understand whatever you're saying, Dr. Arshad, but you really need to understand that people aren't earning the same amount of money anymore. People have lost their jobs. People have lost their incomes. यहाँ पे बात होनी चाहिए fee किस तरह हम reduce कर सकते हैं. Try to cut costs where you can. पहले बहुत ज़्यादा budget इस्तेमाल होता था LUMS का electricity use होने पे. अभी भी use हो रही है, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा. But इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि हम उसी हिसाब से fees charge करें हर बच्चे को. फीस रिड्यूस हो सकती है, बट इट्स अप टू यू गाइस कि आप रिड्यूस करें उस फी को. और ये सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट बात है, इसके हमें लड़ना चाहिए. ठीक है. फैकल्टी भी नहीं मना कर दिया कि हमने कैंपस में नहीं रहना, एंड आई एम विद देम, आई एम विद यू ऑल, बट यू प्लीज एवरी पर्सन इन द फैकल्टी नीड्स टू अंडरस्टैंड कि यू नीड टू ट्रस्ट योर स्टूडेंट्स. यू नीड टू मेक असेसमेंट्स फेयर टू देम. हम लोग हर चीज ट्राई कर लेते हैं, बट हमें फिर भी कोई ट्रस्ट नहीं करता कि आप लोगों ने जरूर चीटिंग की होगी है. हम एसिंक्रोनस क्लासेस रखेंगे. This is just harming students who are from a lower socioeconomic status who have connectivity issues. We want the faculty to be fair to us. हमारे साथ fair हों. people who, if you are bringing the phased reopening, आपने करनी है, SEC seniors का हक बनता है, freshmen का हक बनता है, इन लोगों का हक बनता है, because they have to be on campus to do these things. PhD students, master students, who need the experience, who need to be in the labs or whatever that they're doing with their supervisors, उनको ज़रूरी है, ठीक है? People, the survey said कि, you know, oh, so many seniors were advocating. तो जाहिर सी बात है, survey में जो senior fill in कर रहा है, senior ही कहेगा.
Cutting you in, but we have to go. We have a lot of other questions and a lot of time, but we understand your point. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. It was a much needed side of the student population that we also wanted to represent. Thank you so much, Ayman. So now we're gonna be going forward to one of the questions that much of the student body had and did submit on their Google documents. And before I do that, I just want to let the students know that we took your questions on the Google Doc for this reason to keep this much more efficient. जैसे ही वो जो shortlisted question है खत्म होते हैं, we will be opening up the floor to you to ask questions as well. So right now we're just going to focus on those questions that have been submitted by people. So another question that students had, and maybe Dr. Arshad or Dr. Ali could answer this, is when will the students be receiving official correspondence about accommodations that you guys are talking about, like connectivity, जिनको connectivity issues हैं या जिनको toxic household हैं, when should they expect official emails or communication so that they know, acha, this is actually happening? Right now, a lot of them are feeling anxiety and confusion that the admin is saying this thing and the student council is also saying this, but we have no official correspondence from the administration. So when could the students expect that?
I encourage all of my colleagues to chip in. My guess is, and I can't give you a date, but my guess is that as we have just extended the date for opening the campus from the 7th to the 15th, and this will be something officially communicated to you. In that communique, we will also indicate some of the points that have been raised today in this discussion, especially in line with the questions that students have been asking, as well as we will put out a piece for people to read on the web page, and perhaps we can also take it out beyond LUMS for those who are interested in following our lead. And many people want to know precisely what you're asking. I think within a week or so, you will have some answers about who is supposed to be, who's going to be invited, at least for the 100 or so people that we are going to start off with in our first batch. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd also like to say, guys, we talk about freedom of speech and respecting people's opinion. So even though Ayman might have an opposing point of view, I would like you all to respect that and not start trolling in the chat or on LDF. We have to understand that we are one as a community, and it's okay to have a different opinion. He isn't enforcing that, and his opinion isn't being enforced. It's okay if you have a different opinion. Let's just respect that and move on, and we will be asking your questions as well. So the next question is from the EMBA students, and from Saman Ji Khan, who was the class representative of EMBA. Their issue is that they state that the EMBA students already come to campus only on alternative weekends, and the campus is of low capacity at that time. So if SOPs are established and they and even the EMBA batch itself is quite small, can they be accommodated to come on campus, because it is highly integral for the EMBA to network and establish those connections, and they feel that it is not happening through the online paradigm, and it feels to them that they're just taking a highly expensive online course. So anyone can answer that question.
I don't see Dr. Al-Noor here with us today, but I think his response would have been similar to the response from Dr. Sabi Anwar, who's the Dean of Science and Engineering, and Al-Noor, of course, is the Dean of the Business School. Look, EMBAs are a special group of students who do require this interactivity, and to be on campus is the best of all worlds. There's a lot of emphasis on the networking experiences they bring, and just the way in which they learn, the pedagogy, etc., speaks to campus learning. But I think the same case can be made from the Dean of Science, who is going to speak similarly about the need for certain groups of students, graduate and otherwise, who need to be on campus, whether to do lab work or to participate in critical research and so on and so forth. So again, this is competing voices who want, rightfully so, to be on campus. And what we can only do at this point in time is accommodate so many. So that you have to leave to the people who are representing all of these groups and these voices. They're going to prioritize. And I mean, if you're Aman, who just or Ayman, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. If you're invited, you might just very well say, no, thank you. This is not right for me to be there. So nobody's going to be forced to be here. But at the same time, there'll be lots of people who want to be on the list and they won't be. And this is what it means that we take care of each other by going through these phases to learn about whether or not LUMS is able to accommodate any students on campus. So this is something of an experiment, and that we're going to learn from and manage as best as we can. You can't guarantee the EMBA students is the bottom line, but they're certainly on the list, just like many other people are. Abdullah, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, sir. So I'm just trying to, so now we have a question from an HSS junior, Roha Sheikh. Roha, you can unmute and you can talk.
Assalamualaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I just wanted to talk about the quality of the online semester that we will now inevitably be having. You say that the quality standards have improved over summer, but students that did indeed opt for summer courses were only having the course load of one course. And even then, the readings and the assignments were greatly reduced. For a regular semester, having 3 to 5, bulky 4 to 6 courses for a normal student, that's a lot of readings and different courses that we'll be taking. According to the communications that even some instructors have given out as recently as yesterday, they are not relaxing the attendance policies as much, and students having connectivity issues, even those who have regularly stable connectivity issues, may face issues from time to time. I personally know that my internet connection goes if the electricity goes out, and in Pakistan, electricity shortages are not regularly timed. So even if we have backups, they might not be present at certain times. Then the attendance policy again, and the fact that students will not be able to use the SSC labs or IST or library facilities is something that is a huge part of the whole learning experience at LUMS, especially considering that we have weeks like dead weeks right before the final exams. We can't have the same opportunities at home, especially in lower income households where students don't even have like a separate room where they can take all of these classes. There are a lot of disruptions at homes which do without a question affect our learning capabilities and how students can concentrate in class, during class, for their assignments, prepare or submit their assignments. LMS, even if we are using it, will we continue to be penalized for submitting an assignment 5 minutes late, or even if we don't have an internet connection, that can be delayed to even like more number of hours. So something that I really want to bring to the concern of the faculty is that our CP and attendance policies should be considered in terms of the online semester and some remission be given. And moreover, for spring semester, we had the option of pass and NC policy. I think that is something that should really be given to the students once more, if not for all of the courses, then at least for 2 out of 4 courses, so that students have some leeway, that they have some option or some concession in this term. Because online education, even if we can see according to the surveys for summer, even if standards have improved, the cases are very different based on the schools or the subjects that we are studying. More reading intensive courses can have more assignments, but courses with more mathematics involved, or courses where students used to interact on a face-to-face personally with the instructors, they simply cannot be taught in the same way. I took an economics course in the summer semester 1, and then I took a law course in summer semester 2, and my experience with both of those subjects varied greatly because of the subject matter that was taught. So I think these are some things that should really be considered. And when we're talking about the preference given to students who will be allowed back on campus, I think the focus should be on NOP scholars, SSC students who need to use these labs, graduating seniors, and incoming freshmen. I believe
Okay.
that is all I have to say for now.
Can I just briefly respond? So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for that feedback. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, so I'm not going to mangle it. I think that is very highly useful to sort of hear back from students in terms of their experience with online learning and what are some of the difficulties they are facing. So just very quickly to tell you that other than the campus safety committee, we also at LUMS created a sort of committee about online learning and what we can learn from this experience. And that committee had given its report and has made several recommendations, and we have had a couple of meetings last week. We're going to have more meetings next week to sort of look at those recommendations, and we are absolutely discussing how we make this more flexible. So I see several people have asked about I think pass no credit policy that was instituted last semester. We are very much debating that, looking into that, looking at pros and cons of that, but at the same time looking at other ways of creating more flexibility, giving you a longer time to drop courses just to accommodate what you were saying about, all sorts of unpredictability, particularly if students will have connectivity issues. We're also looking at how to sort of make the live session recorded and available to students. That's another thing that I think students have been asking. So that is very much part of our focus, is to make sure that we are making this learning online as much as we can, because there are things that we cannot control. But so we will be, communicating some of the results of those deliberation soon, I hope within a week or so.
Can I also jump in here, Abdullah, because I think this was a key set of observations, questions, and remarks by, is it Roja? Is that how you pronounce her name?
It's Roha.
Roha. Okay, Roha. Thank you, Roha. Thank you very much for that. And I would echo what Dr. Farhat has said. And thank you, Dr. Farhat, for summarizing some of the results of this this Teaching and Learning Committee, by the way, has been probably just as prominent and diverse in its views as the Health and Safety Committee. And it did come up with 24 recommendations recently, and we have been deliberating on them. I think the big message here that we are hearing from students again and again, and I will say this from another source as well, is about workload and assessment, and about the conditions of learning from home are extremely difficult and distressing. And I don't think they are falling on deaf ears. They are, in fact, I can assure you, we have had pedagogical training long before COVID. We started with instructional skills workshops, which are 3 intensive days that faculty participate in to upgrade their skills. And then we went online with it. So far, we have had, by the time the school starts, we would have had over 120 faculty members go through this. Now, 7 instructors are co-facilitating this particular course, and I have been one of them, observing what faculty are in fact doing. Faculty are demonstrating acute sensitivity to workload and assessment. They are taking away big chunks from their final exams and trying to give more opportunities through the term. We are also cognizant that when you make choices about how many courses you take, as pointed out by Roha, that you should spread them out and not take more than 3 or 4 courses, the absolute minimum if possible. But at the same time, there is as much, I would say, variance in fantastic courses as there are when we didn't have COVID in the classroom. You had amazing courses, you had good courses, and maybe not the greatest courses. And the same is true with online courses. But what is important here is that every single faculty member has been re-looking at their course outlines, their learning outcomes, their assessment components, and trying to reimagine learning through a medium where they are no longer going to be, the sage on stage and just telling you, and then you're on your own doing your things with other students, but to recognize that this is a very different medium where everybody is learning, and students have to play a big role here as partners in that learning and give feedback. And so there will be feedback mechanisms throughout the term, midterm as well, so that we can keep making adjustments. But I think this is the heart of how the university is responding. Even just as important as we have, say, SOPs for some people that we are experimenting with on campus, this is the 6,000 students that we're talking about who are going to be taking online courses. And I can't emphasize more to you how seriously and how much work, as Ali Khan had said earlier on, faculty have gone triple time in doing this. Not a single person I know has taken a day off. And this is the spirit. This is the LUMS spirit. This is exactly how we stand up together and deal with a learning that, let's admit, has been done successfully long before we started, and we're on a steeper learning curve. That's all. Doesn't mean we can't make this happen. So thank you for those comments, and keep bringing questions about pedagogy, because that is really, I think, going to affect the quality of your experience more than anything else.
Okay. So now we'll...
Abdullah?
Yes, Amar.
I'm so sorry. Can I say something here, or should I go a bit later? I don't want to ruin the structure that you have.
You can speak.
All right, thank you. I just feel that it's very key to address this issue here. I understand that the faculty has been putting in 2-3 shifts at a time to help make the learning better. But I am very sorry to say, but I do think that a large number of students don't think that the results for that are showing, right? And I understand that the evaluations might not be showing that. I can't say exactly why not. Some reasons I even pointed out in my email. I personally don't think the evaluations are a good reflection of what is going on, simply for the fact that there are always a large number of students that don't fill out evaluations properly. So either because they want to just get done with them, or because if they want to, and this is something that even I personally do. If I have a complaint with an instructor, I will never take it up in the surveys that were sent out, because I frankly do not trust that they are completely anonymous, right? And I do think that there are a lot of other students that have these issues as well. And even if we are saying, let's say that these these evaluations work, my only question is that there was an evaluation that was conducted by a fellow student of 1,400 students. Of course, it's not from everyone, but that had a very vastly diverging result showed to it, right? So my only question is, why are we not looking at that? And as Ms. Farah mentioned, I understand that there are committees, in place to doing all of these things. But again, the results for these are simply not showing. It's one thing to set up a committee, but it's another to have them, deliver on results. Just a couple of days ago, maybe even today, there was an email sent out by an instructor saying that if you do not have a stable internet connection, please drop this course. Do not take this course. There are numerous other instances, sadly, which I think I might have forgotten. I'm going to see if I remember any of them.
Yeah, I think
okay, perfect. Abdullah will go over them. Yeah.
Amar, may I just remind you of something? That when you ask people to change a kind of pedagogy they are accustomed to for years and years, in a short period of time, there is 3 different views you can have on that. One of them is that you know what, whatever efforts you're making are bogus, and we don't really care about those efforts because we don't see the results. This is what I'm hearing from you, frankly, that you know, आप जो भी कर रहे हैं, it's not good enough. ठीक है, मैं आपसे यही कहता हूँ, मैं आपसे यही अर्ज करता हूँ कि अगर मैं आपको बोलूँ, आप जिस तरह पढ़ते हैं, जिस तरह सीखते हैं, आप बिल्कुल अलग तरीके से सीखें. I think that too requires some time. It requires some learning on and requires some development. We are a learning institution on a trajectory to learn. We want positive feedback from you. Why do you think that we are discounting anything that you give to us? In fact, we take that very seriously. So when feedback comes, negative, positive, or otherwise, to throw the baby out of the bathwater and say student evaluations are meaningless is just perhaps counterproductive. So why don't you, as students, introduce a more meaningful feedback instrument, and we will look at that instrument. It's not that, you know, this is a, we've got it right, you've got it wrong. It's a question of we're all adapting to a new modality. And as I mentioned to you, faculty members have not only taken pedagogical skill training by experts from around the world. There are 7 people teaching this course. They are demonstrating, and I'm witness to this, as I have attended 45 hours of that instruction. I've actually taught that course myself. I'm looking at examples, exemplary examples of people trying their best to adapt. And they are doing it because they love their students and they love learning. Are they going to be magicians? No. Are they going to become fantastic teachers in a moment? No. Are you going to find loopholes here? Yes. But I think if you did that assessment before COVID, you would come to the same conclusions. You would still have people who are careless, who don't do a good job, who give unreasonable assessments, etc., etc., etc. So cherry picking and then generalizing is a dangerous thing to do at a time like this where we need to support and encourage each other rather than to put people down. So that is a mindset and that is an attitude that I hope all of us can join in learning from each other. Criticism is good.
Can I quickly add?
I'll just add something. I think the point wasn't that to attack certain people, but it's like given the online semester already, it's so difficult, given that Pakistan does not have a strong internet infrastructure. A lot of instructors expect that your camera has to be on all the time, your voice has to be on all the time. So what I think the students are talking about is having a standardized attendance or CP policy that all instructors can follow. I know it's against...
Abdullah, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Standardization is the antithesis of learning. You do not standardize it. You cannot standardize courses or outlines or learning. You cannot impose, again, कि आप इस तरह करेंगे. देखिए, academic freedom के मायने होते हैं और वजह होती है. लोग करते हैं जिस तरह वो करते हैं, उनकी, there is a philosophy behind it, there's a thinking behind it, and now we are adapting that and evolving. आप सही कह रहे हैं कि it may not be of good enough standard in some cases. बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं. But you cannot standardize, and I'm jumping on this because this is a national topic already about standardizing curriculum from K to 12, and you have seen that discussion play out. This is not about standardization. This is about personalization. This is about customization. This is about trying to understand how every single person learns. You're not eating hamburgers when you come to LUMS. You are all being thought of as adults who have their own development trajectory, who bring something to the table, and who participate in the learning process as partners, not as recipients who are sitting there and watching a show. So okay. let's please clear that up just a little bit.
Absolutely. Can I just very quickly add to this? And that is, you know, I think what we have been trying to do at LUMS, and even more so now, is something really quite distinctive, which is that in the Pakistani climate, we are trying to really empower students, and in that process, there are going to be all sorts of perhaps difficulties and hurdles. And I think one of the most important things currently is that social media is really, really corrosive for civil discourse. And so part of the issue, at least for me personally, is if we are still deliberating certain things and we have not made final policies, and if we start to communicate, there will be all kinds of cherry picking and things that, so in terms of just communicating, we're trying to sort of feel our way through this to create mechanism to do better communication with the students. And we will be, as I said, within next week or two, be addressing some of the issues that you're raising in terms of online learning and flexibility. Absolutely, as our VC said, academic freedom, we cannot, part of what has been distinctive about education at LUMS is that the administration has kept that classroom space as sacred. It is up to the faculty to shape that, but that doesn't mean that we cannot help faculty think through some of these issues, and that's what we've been doing. So part of it, I think we're learning to communicate, and even when they're difficult, and know some of the students are frustrated right now because they think that their questions are not being answered, even though this might be an imperfect kind of a mechanism, but it's better than nothing. So that's all.
I think again, it wasn't about standardizing or forcing students, faculty to be like, "Aap aise kare." It's given this online semester and that the people, all of them aren't on the same level field. If all of them had those good internet connections and easy accessibility, then it wouldn't be an issue. No one would be staying that. It's just that maybe have lenient attendance policy. Don't be like, agar aapka camera pehle 5 minute on nahi hota, you're absent. And one instructor did look, people didn't add their name to the file, and he gave 0 to everyone. So just be accommodative. That's I think the whole essence of what the students are asking. So now I'm going to be opening up the floor to the students, and we'll be starting with Safa Imran. And I would be asking the students to change the theme to, as a lot of them want to talk about the fee issue if the campus isn't opening. So that's where I would be expecting most of these students to speak. So Safa, I'm going to be allowing you to speak, and you can talk about your points. You'll have 2 minutes, because again, we want to get as many people done, and we are on short of time. So I will be making sure that you have 2 minutes. So just make sure you finish your points within those 2 minutes. Safa, you can speak.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, so I won't be talking about the fee issue because I'm not an NMP student and it's not my forte. I was told to talk about specifically the continuation of the of the campus if coronavirus is going to stay. But for the fee issue, it's like really important, and I really hope that an NMP student is given space to talk about it. But what I was just thinking is that I feel like, especially as we can see in the chat box and as we can see from students who are concerned about returning to campus, and very rightfully so, because it is a very scary situation, I think that there is a fundamental disconnect here between what students are actually demanding and what the perception is. So when we talk about a reopening of a campus, right, or when we talk about a smart hybrid semester, that does not necessarily entail that every single person, whether it's a faculty or a student, needs to be on campus at all times. I think that one of the central things that students have been cognizant of in pushing for a reopening is the fact that we want to have a consent-based system which extends to both faculty and both to students, and they should be allowed to choose between whether or not they want to attend classes or hold classes on an on-campus situation. And moreover, in order to facilitate live lectures, they should also have technological updates for live streaming to go on. There's that one issue. And secondly, I also want to talk about the fact that when we talk about the fact that there are risks to multiple actors and not just students and faculty, I'm completely aware of that, and that's very true. One of the biggest people that come into my mind when you think about that is the janitorial staff, who have to be cleaning surfaces all of the time. And this is one thing that I noted living in Lahore, is that I have been traveling around Lahore, and especially going through Kachi Abadis for an internship over the summers. And what I've noticed is that within Kachi Abadis, there are perhaps thousands of people on the roads all the time. And I'm not exaggerating here, there is not a single SOP being followed. There's not a single mask or single anything being followed. And that is essentially the state of what our country is, apart from urban areas or even parts of urban areas, because even in places like DHA, people are not wearing masks. It's a universal thing that people in Pakistan do not follow SOPs. When we want LUMS to be reopened, we want very strict SOPs, including janitorial staff who can have shifts, firstly, and secondly, they can be given very strict measures such as masks and face shields in order to do their work. And people like the ones who work in food areas, they can have that entire setup converted to takeaway rather than sitting. And essential staff in offices, for instance, should be very, very limited. So the rationale behind this is that we want to eventually see this campus opening, because as the VC pointed out earlier as well, zero risk of COVID will never exist. Will rise and fall multiple times throughout the year, even with the advent of a vaccine, because with a vaccine, we don't know when the production is going to happen, we don't know the distribution, and we don't know the efficacy of a vaccine. So it's not sustainable to continue to be an online university for as long as we can. And I also have issues with the idea of letting limited people come. Of course, at first there needs to be a phased opening so that the administration can test the SOPs measures. However, this phased opening, what we really want to see as students is that we want to see that this phased opening is going to be leading towards a wider open, and to reiterate, based upon the consent of students. And as far as summer semesters even go, I've personally taken 2 of them myself, and they were perhaps like the worst semesters I've done. And that's not because of the admin, and that's not because of the teachers either. I don't put this blame on them. I put this blame on the fact that it's just because of the inherent nature of online classes. Being in front of a screen all the time with the blue light and on your face all the time, it's caused me headaches, an extreme amount of eye pain, and a lack of sleep, because even melatonin levels are affected by a continuous exposure of blue light. I haven't been sleeping well, and I have actually been getting headaches, and this is after taking 2 summer courses. And to reiterate again, this isn't the fault of anyone, this is just how we have to deal with things. I just don't see how it's going to be sustainable to continue to be online, or at least where there's no active approaches to trying to convert into a hybrid as soon as possible. And lastly, can I just add one more thing? Okay, so one thing I just wanted to add was that as far as the feminist issue goes, I just want to speak a little thing about, that I was thinking in my own capacity as vice president of FEMSOC. I just want to say that the FEMSOC as a society was not involved in this student movement. In fact, no society was. This is based upon a conglomerate of individual students with no ideological motivations, firstly. And secondly, the thing is that I find that it has been quite unfair and aggravating to keep pointing out feminists over and over for this, because we aren't going to be taking responsibility of this, since we do not have an onus of the behavior of every single student at LUMS, and we don't claim to be the caretakers of each bad behavior. And as far as that goes, I feel like it would be more constructive to address students rather than feminists in specific. Thank you.
So yes, so thank you, Safa. Now we'll be moving on to, I think Dr. Ali also, Dr. Ali wanted to say something. I saw in the chat that he stated that he didn't. Dr. Ali, you want to add something? I'm sorry.
No, I put it in the chat box. I think everyone has seen it, but I think just to respond to Safa, I think that we all agree with what she said. It isn't the case that we are not considering taking anyone onto the campus again. That is very much under consideration. All I'll say is that, that is something for Dr. Samia and her team to let us know. I mean, I had one view of how many people could come on, others had different views. But in the end, we'll have to let her make that call because she's the expert in that area. But it's not the case that we're not going to. It's very much, as I think Safa has been saying, we want to take on a manageable amount, see if the systems work. And then, inshallah, if the SOPs are being followed, if we are able to contain cases, there's no reason why you can't pick up the pace even. But, I think the most reasonable way of doing it is to do it that way rather than take on a much larger number and risk something that is, that may happen. So, I completely agree with what she said. But I also think that we are going in that direction. We have looked at the possibility of, what are we going to do with the ventilation? We've looked at, PDC. We've looked at making it takeaway. So a lot of these things are happening.
Thank you so much. So now we'd like to introduce the new topic of the fee, because a lot of people want to talk about the monetary issues, and I would like to take that off. And we'll be, after me, I think Varda will be talking about the NOP issue as well regarding the stipend. So first of all, I just want to ask any one of the panelists can answer this, but there's a question by the student body that assuming that the entire academic year will be online, it is undeniable that you will save a lot of expenses related to fuel, electricity. even if we have a single semester online, the save cost of fuel and electricity will be very significant. Should we expect students to see a reflection of this save cost in the fee of students? This is a question that we got in the Google document. And another one was that why are students being made to pay the same price for credit hours when most of the facilities are unavailable? So any of the panelists can jump in and take these questions, and then we'll ask the students to join.
Can I make just a very general comment, and then I think my colleagues can give more specific. I think one of the things about higher education finance is that students are maybe not always very well acquainted with is the fact that this education is never in private universities, well-known universities, it's never that the whole operation is run by just student tuition. It's always subsidized. So your tuition pays, and I don't know what the percentage is at LUMS, of operating expense, but it's not 100% of the operating expense. There are other ways because people contribute money, etc., to subsidize that. So the idea that the university is operating completely on your tuition money, and when the operating expenses go down, your tuition should go down. I think that's maybe one of the things that you sort of have to think about more critically. The other thing, of course, is simply there are costs that cannot be cut back. You don't want your faculty to be fired. You don't want your staff to be fired. The biggest expenses usually in universities are those kinds of things. You still have to run your facilities. Yes, you may save something from not having air conditioning on, but then, there are other ways that COVID has increased our expenses. So those are just very general things that I know simply from, the context of private universities and how their finances work. But I'm sure my colleagues can talk more specifically.
Dr. Harsha, would you like to respond?
So let me actually jump in if it's okay. Arshad, yeah, aap respond karna chahe.
No, please go ahead, Adnan. We didn't hear from you. Of course, you're welcome to jump in.
So one of the things which students need to understand is exactly this. First of all, I'm reading the chat right now, and if you look at the tone, it just makes me inclined not to answer such questions. There has to be a modicum of decency and politeness that you as a student should have, okay? This kind of attitude will have absolutely zero tolerance at other universities. So while we are here to answer the questions, and I will address the question, your attitude and entitlement should be in check, okay? And I say that as someone who's always advocated for students. Now to the point, as Farhad pointed out, the tuition does not pay for all our expenses. Actually, tuition pays for between 65 and 70% of the expenses. There are other things like executive programs and so on, which have been drastically cut. So the university is in a financial bind because other sources of income have dried up. Similarly, donors who sort of support this institution are also in a financial bind and will not be donating as much. So these are, and we have not only not cut financial aid, but we have increased financial aid overall. So this is where our expense has gone up. Electricity costs indeed have gone down. I sit in an office without air conditioning 10 hours a day, okay? So, and I don't do it out of fun or anything. I'm there because I need to work just to address the issues that are being raised. And we have been doing that kind of work. So when I look at the chat box and hear these caps entitled comments, I just feel that students have really crossed the line so many times on these issues, and there has to be some introspection from your side. I hope the question was answered about your fee issue. The NOP issue, nobody's not tackling it. The NOP stipend was something that was brought to our attention, mine and Arshad and Farhad's recently. We are looking into it. It's something on which we are favorably inclined, but we have to look at the resources and the reasons why that happened, and we'll get back to the students as was conveyed to the council. 2 days ago. Thank you.
Yes, we did. I think Varda was the person who. Oh, so do you want to jump in? Okay, so Varda was the person.
Sorry, one last thing. Can I add, Abdullah?
Yes, sure, sir.
Yes. So one student said, "I pay you guys 4.5 lakhs, and we are entitled to those opinions. Please take your money and go someplace else." I say this with all responsibility. Anybody who feels like this should take their money and go someplace else. Okay.
Okay, so Varda was the one person who brought to the student council's attention regarding the NOP stipend issue, and we did end up contacting Dr. Adnan, who did tell us that he is looking favorably upon it and will give us updates soon. But I think Varda, you have the floor and you can speak. You will have 2 minutes. Varda, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Varda, we can.
All right. First of all, I would really like to thank Dr. Adnan Khan to personally look into the issue and to be in the favor of that issue. But here I would like to just add some reasons why NOP stipend is so essential for the NOP scholars at this point in time. So I feel like that the purpose of the stipend is to facilitate education of the NOP scholars so that they don't have to worry about their finances. But since it's COVID and the circumstances have changed, but I would like to mention here one thing, that living at home does not mean that students necessarily do not have to pay their own bills. We all know that due to this pandemic, the people who were doing jobs are the most affected. Industries are downsizing due to their due to the lack of the financial resources. People have lost their jobs, and also there are times when there is less demand for the kind of work they were doing, and there are also less job opportunities available to people. Also, most of the NOP scholars used to take up the opportunities that were available on campus for students such as IST student interns and the interns at library. And most of the NOP scholars used to take up that opportunities so that they were able to fulfill their financial requirements. But since campus is closed and we do not have access to those opportunities, I feel like that this time stipend is really needed by the NOP students. Also, I collected the data of more than 80 NOP students, and I asked them to state the reason why they need their stipends when they are not at the university. And in almost all of them stated that since they are living off campus, which means that they are not using most of the facilities that were available to the campus, such as most of the technical related facilities, such as IST labs, library facilities, and the internet facilities. And they said that since they live in the far off areas and they need to travel to cities from their villages to have the connectivity issues resolved, and they really need some sort of financial resource to fulfill those travel expenditures. Also, I do feel like that admin really does not need to accommodate the students who come from abusive households or such households that whose environments are non-conducive for their studies. But I really think that if NOP scholars are able to get their stipends, then they can rent different places to live there and get their issues resolved. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to talk about financial issues a little bit more, Abdullah, or do you want to go on?
Yeah, sure. So you can jump in.
Okay. So I think Vardhan has raised exactly the kinds of issues that are very dear to us in terms of thinking about the ones who are disadvantaged or most vulnerable, or find themselves in a situation where the world around them has deeply affected their ability to not only learn, but in some cases to even survive. We are cognizant of that. So this is why when we did our budgeting, and there was an extensive email written about fees and about financial issues. Maybe people don't like reading long emails, but the short end of it is that, as I mentioned earlier on, when we do our budget exercise, we have a number of levels at which the budgets get scrutinized. So there is a rationale presented by the person who makes the budget, and this goes from the front line. You know, we have 15 centers running at LUMS. We have 5 full-fledged schools running at LUMS. All of those invoke budgets. We have central operations in which we have budgets. All of these budgets get looked at and consolidated not only through the leadership here, but also through the finance committees, and it goes through the trustees, it goes to the board of governors. There is a process here with checks and balances to see, are we fulfilling our obligations as a university for those who we set out to serve? Here, supporting students has been our #1 priority, and this is what our budgets have attended to. 1 out of 3 students do get financial support, out of which the NOP are the most vulnerable, and they get 120% support for the tuition fees, stipend, etc. We have not cut anything. We have preserved this. And then the livelihood. So this is one big chunk of our budget. Similarly, another big chunk are the people who work here. This is 60% of our expenses are people who work here. We have not let anybody go for the simple reason that we feel this is something where it will compromise the integrity of our operations and your student learning experience. When you look at budgets, there are many layers and levels to it. As I mentioned to you, there are many checks and balances here. We are accountable for our budgets to the folks who give us money from outside. So you give us money as students, but as the provost as Dr. Farhat pointed out, there are other stakeholders who give money, particularly to NOP students, who fund and want to see them succeed and see the money go directly in their pockets. And this is what we do. We have checks and balances. We haven't upended our systems. We haven't created new rules for COVID. In fact, we are being more compliant than ever before, more transparent than ever before. We are sharing all this information. We are learning from each other in terms of where can we be more efficient. But may I remind all the students that COVID has in fact imposed financial hardships to universities that are no longer going to be around. We are trying to make sure that we have a budget that will not only go through this period of uncertainty, but at the same time preserve our values and our standards that are sacred in terms of this university's stature and what it aspires to do. So budgeting is not just looking at one line item and saying, "अरे ये आपका तो बहुत पैसे बन गए हो गए, आप हमें ये पैसे हम वापस दे दें." हम देने की कोशिश तो कर रहे हैं. 13% जो increase थी tuition की वो हटा दी ना हमने. जो SSE में lab fees which was regarded excessive कम कर दी हमने. But the centers that are there, the services that are being provided, you want academic advising, you want accommodation and equity, you want the Learning Institute to work, you want the water center to run, and I can go on with the list of services that are provided. They aren't run on thin air. Resources are required. You want people want to come to campus. Who's going to pay for that? That is being budgeted for. So these are considerations that I think perhaps you can leave to those folks who have been hired to look after these matters with all the checks and balances in play, including students who look at these budgets. May I remind you, in our governance, students play a vital role at the school level and at the university level, and with all the committees that you're hearing. So have some faith and trust in the people that are absolutely committed in putting your welfare first. Give us a chance, and at the same time, join us in helping us to find more creative solutions and how we can do better with the limited resources that we have. rather than, as Dr. Khan said, this is not a debate. This is not about who makes the most points. This is about trying to resolve a challenge that is a once in a lifetime global issue that has, been described by Dr. Samia very aptly as a forest fire in which we must all sit together and row in the same direction. Let's not forget that. So budgeting is something you may think very specific, but in fact it is, integrated throughout all of the decisions that we have been talking about, because it's resource intensive. I'll stop there, Abdullah.
Thank you, sir. So now we'll be taking Fatma Rasool. You are being allowed to talk. You will have 2 minutes, and yeah, I think you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is regarding the tone policing, which is always happening like in every open house. I'm sorry, sir, if you call out students for tone policing, then what about all the voices you guys raised here? With all due respect to the VC and Adnan Khan, at many times in this open house, you guys have raised voices for whatever reason, but what about that tone? I'm just saying this on one side that if you guys are going to tone police students, then I mean, this is not okay either. So yes, I'm gonna stop there. And also, as many of the panelists talked before, 30% of LUMS ki population, 30% of capacity. So can we get some data on how much capacity is? Like, aapne pehle 145 you said the faculty members are there. So if that went well and there never was a case, so you can start, why can't you take that as a starting point? Thank you.
May I say something about tone policing? So I've been reading some of the comments in the chat. People are making fun of using humor, but in a very derisive मजाक के लिहाज से, बहुत ज़्यादा मजाक के लिहाज से, right? So I think the problem again is that when, and it's not just your generation, but when everyone gets behind social media and start texting, they forget some of the basic rules of etiquette, adab adab, जो हमारे अपना इखलाक, जो हमारा अपना culture भी सिखाता है, and they start to say things that are very inappropriate. Now I saw Adnan becoming impassioned, and I would say the reason he was impassioned is because he has been advocating your case in the most strongest way in our forums, in our meetings. So I can see that he gets disappointed by the fact that some of you are speaking in a way that we would not want our LUMS students to speak, in a very entitled way, जो कि जिसे हम कहते हैं ना spoiled rich kids के लिहाज से. So all of this we're trying to, so tone policing, I would say, and I'm going to go out on a limb, I'm going to take that risk, is part of what we would want you to learn at LUMS, is how to appropriately express yourself in different forums. So I'm sorry, मैं यहाँ आपकी बड़ी बन के pedagogically, I think it is our right to tone police you. Because one of the things you learn in becoming an adult is what is appropriate form of communication in what context.
Thank you, Farhat. And since my name was also invoked by the last speaker, if I have been disrespectful, and if I have I've written many emails to you, students, and I still will also say with all the passion, sometimes I do raise my voice, I apologize for that, but it's only because I'm passionate about my views, not to offer any disrespect or show any disrespect to you. I will go out on a limb and say, we have said this time and again, and our stance has not changed. We are here to serve you, and we are here to determine ways in which we can move ahead. And we're having a discourse here, which needs to be, at a level where we are learning something from each other. To kind of point fingers and say to each other, "Ke aap ye hain, aap wo hain," I think the reactions that you are hearing from at least the administrative side is one where there seems to be a lack of empathy about what people are trying to do in the interest of the better good or well-being for all. So can we drop that stance and come back to where we started about resolving a problem collaboratively, mutually, with respect, and with the dignity that this conversation deserves?
Yes. I think the Dr. Adnan wants to speak something. You have your hand raised.
Ji, thank you. So just to address some concern, a few students also wrote to me about, we understand that people would be facing financial difficulty. We have a pedagogical partnership program for which you would have received email. Do apply to all these opportunities we're trying to create to support our students in these times. Apply for it. If you're not sure what's available, just email us. We try to find something. We can't guarantee work for everyone, of course, but we are trying to create these opportunities. And this was way before COVID when we started working on these pedagogical partnerships and want to expand it, really expand the program. One thing to keep in mind for students is, again, keep an eye out for these kind of opportunities to sort of get a little bit of financial support in addition to anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think what Dr. Adnan just said, that answers the question that a lot of students, especially NOPs, had this. They stated that they were using those internships on campus to assist themselves, and so basically students can now do that through these pedagogical partnerships. So thank you for that, sir. We will be taking Shoaib Arif's questions next, but before that, there's a question in the Google sheet that we do want to ask. So there was a confusion that the students had, and the question basically states that someone from the administration stated that student fees are being used to fund financial aid, and the person who has asked the question feels as if that is, can there be a clarification on this issue, if that is the case or not? I think Dr. Arshad, maybe you can answer that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that quickly, Abdullah?
Yeah, so basically there's confusion among the student body that the fees that they pay is also a part of that is going to fund financial aid. And so they wanted clarification on that issue because they felt that that was a bit wrong for people to pay for someone else. So that was a question in the Google document that students have submitted. So want to just clarification on that issue.
Okay. Look, so the fundamental way in which we operate is a federated model, right? So, there is most of the tuition money comes from the largest school, which is, of course, the Gurmani School of both humanities and social sciences. And then, of course, we have other big schools, including the business school, and we have the science and engineering school, and then two smaller schools, the law school and brand new. And I hope we hear from our incoming dean, Dr. Faisal Bari, who leads the School of Education. So look, when you have a federation of different sizes with different histories, with different number of students, but you have one university, you don't say, I've got more, so I will kya kehte hain, receive more. It's one education. It's one LUMS education, with differences, of course, through the disciplines and through the experiences that you have within your programs and what have you. But you are getting one LUMS degree. And the federation model is one where large schools support small schools, sometimes cross-subsidize other schools, where we have more resource-intensive schools that, at the end of the day, are resource-intensive, not because they are greedy or because they want a larger slice of the pie for the sake of it. It's because they also contribute back in providing scholarship, in increasing our reputation, in discovery research, in application, in integration, and so on and so forth. Milke karte, it's like a family. Like in any family, we have differences. We all try and treat each other with respect and give each other the same amount of resources as best as possible. This is where the administration comes into play. The administration reallocates the resources to all of the units. depending on what development stage they're at and what they are going to contribute to the institutional mission. So we don't sit there and say कि हमारे पास ज़्यादा है तो हम क्या कहते हैं इनको वापस दे दें, इनको कम कर दें. This is not a differentiated model in that sense. Resources aren't allocated on the basis of किसने सबसे ज़्यादा पैसे इसमें उगाए हैं. I mean, Gurmani is giving back in many ways just because of the sheer size of their students. Science and engineering is giving back because of the largest graduate programs they have. Management school is giving back in some of the finest executive training they do in the country. I can go on and on and on for all what the schools do. And together we make a difference. So to start bifurcating this and to say कि हमें ये दिया है तो वापस दे दें, फिर इनको क्रॉस सब्सिडाइज नहीं करें, उनको मदद नहीं करें, लेकिन उनको जरूर करें. आप इस लेवल पे जाएंगे तो फिर I think we're going to run into a lot of difficulties. You'll have to leave that federated model in the way it has been functioning. It's been functioning very well at LUMS, and it will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, Shoaib Arif, I am going to be allowing you to talk. You have 2 minutes to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, so initially, Dr. Ali and Dr. Rashid mentioned the confrontational attitude of the student body regarding the administration's decisions. While I don't condone the tone that was used by the student body, I would just like to add that in the past few years, we've noticed a trend wherein decisions regarding the student body are taken by the admin and they don't necessarily include either the opinion or the input of the student body in itself. So for instance, we got the decision regarding the fee increase out of the blue. The only reason why the admin decided to revert back to the original one was because of the animosity that was generated on social media. Similarly, I don't think that similarly when the admin had decided to cut off the stipend of the NOP students, the student body didn't know about that either. All of these decisions are taken in isolation, and in isolation we learn about it, and then necessarily we react in a way in which we get angry because the administration in itself claims that we have a follow a democratic procedure wherein the student body's opinion is taken into consideration. I'm sorry to say, but this isn't a democratic procedure where the decision that affects the student body, the main component of the university, is the one is basically imposed upon them. Secondly, regarding the reopening of campus, okay, I concede that I concede the fact that that the metrics released by the government in general and even by the WHO wouldn't necessarily be the most accurate, or they don't represent the true side. My question is that what metrics is the university using to come up to basically support the decisions they are making? They're basically coming up with qualitative reasons, and I'm yet to see a quantitative analysis presented by the administration in support of their decision. Lastly, regarding the fee issue, I myself am on 100% scholarship. My father will be losing his job in a month or so because of the epidemic. And I'm not the only one. There are countless who are paying 2 to 3 lakh, who are paying 4 to 5 lakhs here to LUMS. They won't necessarily, but the financial strain on them wouldn't necessarily would put their entire future in jeopardy. Uh, all I can say is I would like to request the admin to please consider, if they're not opening the campus, then at least let at least consider the option or provide at least consider the option of reducing the fee to cater to students who genuinely have such. Thank you.
Sohaib has, that was Sohaib, right? If I had the name right. Abdullah, may I respond to some of the questions raised by Sohaib that are simply not true? Just so that there is a clarification here about decision making. It keeps coming back to the point that this is a top-down, closed, insular, non-transparent way in which LUMS works. These are exactly what has been said here, which is simply not true. And I'm going to be very clear that, in fact, I'd like to ask how many town halls have other vice chancellors conducted openly as we have, or how many times the deans have invited students and spoken directly to their concerns. This is a very open and transparent university, and the way in which it functions. I have worked now 45 years in different universities around the world, and I can tell you that the model that we are following at LUMS does take student governance and student input as seriously as in any other place in the world. Students are elected. They are elected to, there are over 20 students who are elected and who are the voice in the governance decisions that we make, both academically and also for student life related decisions. So to say that these decisions are made ad hoc, when I think I spent about 15 minutes earlier describing that we have a process where we consult and find consensus, and this is including students, where it is very much transparent. On every single issue that has been discussed, students have been present and have given valuable input. And we are so grateful and happy that this is the kind of direction that we are going in. We are asking students to help us in design courses. We're asking students to partner with us as researchers. We're asking students to give input in the budgeting process. We're asking students, whenever a new program comes up, what are their feelings and what are their thoughts and thinking about this. Students are an integral part and will always be an integral part of how LUMS makes its decisions. But they are not responsible. They do not take the responsibility of, say, setting fees. This is not their job. To say that students weren't consulted is absolutely not true. To say that students don't have a say, unequivocally, unambiguously not true. So this is misinformation that has to be dispelled, that we don't care, we don't listen, and we don't consider. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is with the leadership who is appointed to consider these views and then implement them, communicate them, and then to show some results. And we're very proud of those results. And if you want to have another town hall to talk about results, perhaps more positive things that have been achieved in this university, I think maybe the time has come for that as well. Despite the pandemic, despite the difficulties, despite there are, we tend to be operating from a deficit model in terms of always critiquing what's wrong here. How about making a list of what's right here and what is going well for you and for us in presenting a view of leadership that others can also learn from and aspire to. So, you know, this is turning out to be something in which we are, this is almost like a public hearing rather than to learn from each other कि आपने ये गलत किया, ये गलत किया और ये गलत किया. गलत किया है तो सीख लेते हैं फिर क्या गलती थी, and how we can move forward with learning from our mistakes. And we do make our share of mistakes as well. Thank you.
I think Dr. Adnan has his hands up. Dr. Adnan, do you want to jump in?
Thank you, Abdullah. So yes, just to follow up and build on what Arshad said, a university or any organization cannot be run democratically if you mean that it's one vote, we take votes. What if you vote that no exams, right? So no university can run like so. No organization can run like so. What we do is take the input of the students. And how do you incorporate the students' input? It's not by having 50 people or 100 people show up and the loudest voices are the ones that are heard, but it's through an electoral process. That's what democracy is, and that's where democracy comes in. At this moment, at the highest decision-making body of the University Council, we have student representation for the first time in the history of LUMS with full voting rights. They vote, and their vote counts equal to any other person's vote, the VC or the dean's vote. It's equal to that student's vote, your representative. Similarly, on student councils, we have student representation. And on the disciplinary committee, we have students with full rights. So that's the direction we have tried to move on. There's always room for improvement, but that's the kind of democracy. What I hear from a lot of people is this idea that democracy is that all 5,000 students of the university gather on each and every issue, and whoever can shout the loudest wins the day. That's not how democracy works, right? That's a rabble. So democracy works through your elected representatives. Elect the people who will reflect your voices. Thank you.
Yes, I think just adding on to this, yes, the student council was for the first time made part of this new shared governance system where we did get voting rights in many committee. So yeah, that is sort of true in the fact that we do have our voice. And that's something that we want to say to the students that uh, the new elections will be coming up, and then it's your job to vote for the people who you feel like will reflect your stances and your voices. And we will also be having a town hall on this to explain exactly how the whole structure works, because I do feel there is a lot of ambiguity and confusion regarding this. Now we'll be moving on to Gibran Khalil, who is an SSC senior, and he wants to talk about the SSC charter. Gibran, you can unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
Yes, loud and clear.
Assalamu alaikum. So I would like to talk about the new SSC fees. So first we SSC students had to face lab charges for labs which non-SSC students were presumably allowed to use as well. They didn't have to pay for it exactly. And semesters went by where even us SSC students did not pay for some labs, but we did not use the labs, but had to pay for it. But let's assume that's all in the past and everything. But we have this new SSC fees now. And it's supposedly for new software, for maintenance and whatnot, right? And my first point is we strongly believe that we should not be paying for maintenance if we are not simply using the services. There's no more further argument to this, right? If agar hum use nahi kar rahe hain, we should not be paying for any maintenance fee at all. We understand that these labs वगैरह exist and everything and they need to be maintained, but we believe that that does not come under the student's responsibility to pay for their maintenance if we are not using them. Secondly, the new software वगैरह that has been supposedly introduced with the new SSC fee, what we want is complete transparency as to what this software is or whatever else it is, not only limited to software, whatever else it is. We want complete transparency. What is it that we are paying for and what benefit are they supposed to be providing us, right? And to my third point is, are the SSC students only going to be using it or also non-SSC students going to be using it? Because we do not want to be the only ones paying for it if non-SSC students are going to be using it as well. We don't know what this software is, of how it's supposed to benefit us, make our online learning better. But in my assumption, non-SSC students will be able to use it as well if it's going to make online learning better, right? So if that is the case, then non-SSC students can also use it. The fees should most definitely be divided across the whole student body and not be on the SSC students only. And another point I wanted to add on to this was, for example, the HSS Econ Math majors, they pay a smaller fee as compared to the SSC Econ Math major. Things like that don't make sense to us and everything, right? We want complete transparency in things like these as to why are we paying more for some specific things, and we want it to be detailed, like what benefit are they supposed to be providing us. So yeah, that's it.
Can I just jump in very quickly here again, taking the prerogative of a new person and just sort of, I had the opportunity to look at overall picture of LUMS' finance. And so Gibran, one thing I can tell you, and again, this is part of the issue about knowing things in their greater detail, and some of it we can share with you, and some of it just is not appropriate always to share with students, but I can just say simply that SSC is a more expensive school. Your education, in fact, is subsidized in some ways by other ways, because running science and engineering program is a very expensive proposition. And this happens in other places too. So I think perhaps rather than you or whatever extra fees that are being charged to you subsidizing, you're sort of complaining about how this might sort of be unfair because econ and other places are not paying that. I think if you start to think about different departments and disciplines and how much it takes to deliver that education, if you had maybe that kind of which I don't blame you, you don't, because you don't look at that picture, then perhaps your point of view would be shifted, because some majors are simply more expensive to deliver.
Maybe Dr. Tariq could answer this. He is hailing from SSC, and maybe he has a better understanding of this issue.
This is a legacy thing. I mean, I would probably think that your line items associate ki again, they're not exactly, I'm not aware of, maybe Dr. Sabi could speak about this. I'm not aware of any specific software jo ke istemal ho raha hai, but I mean, it's no brainer that the SSC has the top labs that you have in any undergrad program. Physics ki labs, chemistry ki labs, biology ki labs are sort of second to none in the country. Isi tarah, you've got great facilities at the EE, you've got extensive computing facilities everywhere. So, and then you've got a sort of a recurring budget, jo ke is used for getting chemicals as well as other sort of equipment that is used in all of the labs. So it's a very expensive affair. Now, whether you want to call it lab fee or whether you want to call it SSC fee or whether you want to call it something else, I mean, it's sort of the whole, it's more costly, and people studying in the SSC from the very inception of SSC are paying a slightly higher fee than the remaining students. Whether we should have this distributed across all the students as a federated model or not, that is something that the costing people can guide us on. But ऐसा नहीं है कि, I mean, यानी you say कि अच्छा ये इस software का मैंने इस्तेमाल नहीं किया, and then you start counting कितने घंटे इस्तेमाल किया. That's not how fees work. So I would leave it at that. And then the econ math part, of course, I mean, the students do have an SSC first year that they spend. They do all the labs, they do everything as other science students. So that's the delta, that's the difference that they have now. Whether that's you think it's too much or too less or whatever, alag debate hai. But I mean, SSC is more expensive than any other education that you have, and
so can we also say, thank you, Tariq. Can we also say that it's unfair that we are giving 50% reduction to women who are in the MBA and other graduate programs in the business school? I mean, why are we doing that? Why aren't we having a 50% reduction for everybody in the entire university? I mean, the reasons for that. Why is the science student paying more? Because most universities in the world who have science and engineering programs indicate that because they, the reasons that have been given, right? We have state-of-the-art labs, we have startup grants, we have chemicals, we have consumables, we have materials, we have supplies, we have the mat lab, we do have software. We can name the software if you really want. That this adds up. And when it adds up, so students make a contribution through a science and engineering fee. It shouldn't have been called a lab fee. It's a much broader based fee. But then, as I mentioned earlier on about the federated model, other schools are paying back into SSC as we redistribute resources. So, it's not black and white as you are making it out to be कि हमने ये इस्तेमाल नहीं किया तो हम ये पैसे नहीं देंगे. हम स्विमिंग पूल नहीं गए तो हम स्विमिंग पूल के हमारे लिए घटा दें आप. हम जिम नहीं यूज करते तो फिर हमारे जिम के लिए आप जरा पैसे कम कर दें हमारे लिए. हम घास we run around a lot in the gardens, so that gardening and maintenance fee, let's figure out how some people should pay more, some people should pay less. You can understand where we are going with this conversation. It's not as simple as equating one particular expense with the fees that you're paying. What we are doing is including 60-65% of tuition fees with all the other resources that we try and raise on a program, other organizations, and we put together, and then all of the schools come up with their expenses, and then we figure out a way in which a family can redistribute them, so we all at the end benefit from a LUMS education.
I think maybe Dr. Sabi, the students also want to hear the Dean of SSC talk about this, to offer clarification on this.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरे ख्याल में मुझसे पहले डॉक्टर तारिक जदून और डॉक्टर अरशद ने बड़ी तफसील के साथ ये बात बयान की है कि दिस इज़ an SSC fee. SSC is expensive. Computer science is a part of SSC. Mathematics is a part of SSC. और SSC में जो एक्सपेंस बाकी स्कूल्स में वो नहीं है, उसके अंदर कंप्यूटेशनल फैसिलिटीज़ हैं, लेबोरेटरीज हैं, केमिकल्स हैं, पेरिशेबल आइटम्स हैं, इक्विपमेंट है, उनकी मेंटेनेंस भी है, फिर स्टार्टअप ग्रांट्स हैं फैकल्टी की, तो शायद बाकी स्कूल से मुख्तलिफ है कि एक आपने हार्डवेयर के साथ काम करना है, आपने रिसोर्सेज चाहिए। ये दुनिया में एक इट्स अ नॉर्म दैट साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी, so it also sucks in more well. This is a national norm that we are practicing. Unfortunately, the name that we had in the beginning, the lab fee, was a misnomer. It didn't strike the correct chords. It has been corrected to an extent, but this reflects the higher expenditure that our school has. And once this money comes in, it goes back into the university because it's a confederated model. Many of our students actually take courses in the humanities, and likewise, there's a great demand for a minors in computer science, and we even have the space to offer to the large student body who like to get into computer science. So it's a confederated model. We share our resources. There is lateral movement of money across the budgets. It's not that a particular line item is connected to an expense. The fact of the matter is that and it is, and we've been caught in the wrong place in the wrong time, that with this pandemic, labs closed, don't have active labs. This problem has been aggravated, for which all my faculty, the administration is deeply sympathetic. There has been some reduction in the SSE fee, I assume, for this semester. And we're going to work with the administration in the coming months to look at this problem. One problem that you've highlighted is the HSS students and the SSE students paying a differential fee for the math econ major. I think that's a very valid concern. And it has just been brought to my radar, at least as the dean of the school. And I would work with my colleagues to see how this differential could be reduced. But as I wrote in the chat box, the SSE is also cognizant of the need of our students, the PhD students, the master students, the final year students, especially who graduate. They need access to the lab. There's a consensus in our school that we should gradually allow some students to roll into the university, into SSE, to use labs. We are preparing for it. We have a new expert on board, Dr. Samia. We're waiting for her advice. So we are very much on this issue, and we haven't forgotten you. In fact, it's a pressure not only from the students, there's a deep pressure from the faculty, from the staff. We have donor agencies. Our funding timelines are expiring. Other public universities are conducting their research. So there's an entire milieu in which we are operating, and we're trying our best to have our labs partially open for students, for the students whom we think need immediate access. So we are very much with our students on all of these counts, and please continue to be patient. And sorry if you feel that we haven't communicated well enough, but you've been on the top of our minds in the past few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to be going to Malia Masood, who wants to ask a question for international student accommodations. Malia, you can unmute yourself and talk. You have 2 minutes.
Abdullah, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Right. Assalamu alaikum.
I don't know how many people are in the same position as I am at this point, but I am an international student. And when LUMS announced the closure of the hostel and the buildings for everybody right before the spring break, I only had 3 days to return back to Saudi Arabia, which couldn't happen because everybody wanted to go back and I just couldn't get on a flight. So since the last 5 months, I have been shifting between relatives, not living in my own house with my own things, living off a suitcase. And I don't know what the future of the next semester holds for me. Like, will I be allowed back on campus? Because I don't hear anybody talking about it. I have been emailing so many people, but unfortunately, I haven't heard anything back. And since the new semester is only like 3 weeks from now, I'm getting really worried. And just to be clear, I cannot leave the country. Even though I want to leave Pakistan and go back to my home, I just can't because the Saudi airports aren't open for people like me. That's what I wanted to ask, as in what's going to happen to me? Will I be allowed back on campus or do I just have to move between relatives? Thank you.
I think Adnan will answer that, Abdullah.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for raising that. I also got your email so we are sort of, the issue is that we want people to be on campus. This is something which probably you just don't understand. We want you to be back on campus. It's just we want you to be safe when you're on campus. At this point, we have a large number of requests from people with different issues, including connectivity issues and issues like yours are, of course, very genuine. What do you do, right? We are in the process of evolving a mechanism. So, for example, if we are advised by our physician, the infectious disease person, Dr. Samia, that in the first week you should have 100 students, and then on a rotation include every week another 100, some number. Then we need to prioritize. How would that happen? Hopefully within a week we'll have some answers for you, because again it's an evolving thing, and various numbers were being considered to be brought on campus. So way before the semester starts, the semester is going to start on the 15th now, just because of government directives. There is time. You will be informed before that what's going to happen. We cannot guarantee everybody who needs accommodation that we will be able to provide that, just because there's a very hard upper bound. Punjab government has told us that not more than one the capacity of the hostels could be used. That sets an upper bound right away. Then on top of that, we have our team of experts who will guide us on the safe way to bring students on campus, right? So the short answer in summary is that we will have a mechanism, and hopefully within a week, and be able to communicate that. And based on that, again, nobody could be guaranteed a position at this point, right at the beginning of the semester, because we have to open on a rolling basis. I hope that answers your question. That's the best we could honestly tell you at this point. Anything other than this would sort of be fudging what our knowledge. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, Sir Adnan, I completely understand the fact that there are restrictions and upper bounds that are placed that the university has to follow. But there are some categories, of students that should have been allowed on campus that, the council also talked about with the administration. And one particular category that has been talked about before, but there has been no confirmation on this issue yet, is about students from abusive households. Now, because the university has previously stated that they will offer accommodation for such students, there has not yet been any confirmation on how that accommodation will be provided, how those students are to apply for this, or when they are to apply for this. And right now, with around only, a very short time remaining, for the semester to begin, a lot of students are very, very anxious about, when this process will start and, how they are to, go about it, who they are to reach out to exactly. Students have been given a couple of committees to go to, the wellness committee and the OAI are a couple of them. But क्योंकि अभी तक कोई responses नहीं आए, कुछ नहीं आया, students just want confirmation at this point. किस तरह इस process के through जाएं? Because there has been a lot of talk about, there has been no quantitative measure to, execute this properly, and there has been nothing that the students have been able to rely upon regarding this measure. So can you please shed some light upon, can any of you from the administration please shed some light upon how exactly this process will go about for students, what the exact timeline for this may be, and how exactly, who students are to go to, who they can trust with this, because abusive households, that's a very sensitive issue. And you can't necessarily just tell students from abusive households or from toxic households to just, come to campus anytime, like at their convenience, because that's not how it goes, obviously. So if you could just please, just give some confirmation regarding that.
Okay, thank you. Let me take that one. So this exactly, after your very valid question, these are students whom we have accommodated in the past because we feel that part of our job is also to provide a secure environment to those who are at risk. However, you have to understand now this is exactly the kind of conflict we face. There are students who are international students who don't have a place, and then there's a student coming from a toxic domestic environment. If we have one spot, that's our conundrum, and that's what we are trying to grapple with, right? That the number of people who probably, for one reason or another, would want to be on campus and perhaps have a genuine case may exceed the number of spaces we can safely provide. And that is what I just said before in the previous question, that we will probably have a clearer picture in a week or so as to whom to reach out. People have been reaching out to the right people. That would be our counseling and psychological services, the CAPS people, and then they sort of then give their recommendation to us, to me, and that's already in the pipeline. So people who faced situations like that have reached out. I hope that answers it.
Sir, I would just like to add that with all due respect, this has been done, like students have been reaching out to CAPS and OAI, the relevant committees, but all of this so far has been done unofficially. So they either come to a council member, they will ask, who to go to, and a council member will refer them, or they will ask around and they will find out that, this committee might be able to help. So, some official communication at this point would be a lot more helpful, perhaps from, emails from the administration and, an exact process to go about from the administration. That would help.
Thank you. So we will keep that in mind. You also have to be mindful. And look, I'm a straight talker, as you might have noticed, all students. And then the point is that there is, in the past, when we have reached out, there have been genuine issues, and then there have been people who have issues that they made up for the few spaces we had on campus. That had happened. And then so people who have genuine issues, I think a lot of them have reached out. An official email soliciting, if you are in any kind of domestic toxic environment, reach out to us, might muddle the issue because of this reason. And I'm not saying that any one of you who are online may do that, but this has been our experience, and other students have come up and told us, and our counselors have then followed up and told us. So that's the issue. I think right now, people have been reaching out to CAPS. It's the reason nobody's gotten back to them, I have gotten back to some students, is that we don't have a concrete plan right now. And as I said, the big problem is we needed expert opinion to come up with a number, that safe number, say right at the beginning of the semester, and then rolling numbers and the timeline, right? Once we have that, And we have the list of students. There's students who have asked us for accommodation because of accessibility issues, no internet in their area. That's a genuine concern. Toxic household, that's a very genuine concern, and so on. We are in the process of putting all this information together. Okay, I can't tell you anything concrete because I told you the process we are going through right now. Hope that gives some clarity at least in terms of the information we have right now.
So sir, maybe yes sir.
नहीं बोलें जरूर, पहले आप बोलें.
नहीं मैं बस ये पूछने वाली थी कि maybe expect a response, somewhat of a response by next week then, as Sir Adnan said.
Okay, I can give you one response right now, and we can fine tune that response so that every student who isn't here today also gets to know this. देखें, आपको सब बता रहे हैं कि we have a hard constraint, first of all, with how we are going to begin this process of reopening the campus. So we've talked about a small number of 100, 200, possibly 200, depending on the right now needs assessment that is being done by experts, including Dr. Saima, who has shared with you why it is necessary to be prepared when we open up the campus. Okay? So numbers are few. So one thing is very clear. If we look at the buckets that have been discussed so far, people who need connectivity, people who are in toxic households, people who need access to labs, research equipment, and so on, NOP students, financial, those under financial constraints, and there may be other buckets as well. You know, this is going to be more than 100, 200 students. It's going to be more than maybe 600, 700 students. It may be a quarter of our student population. So yes, that is the point Adnan was making, that if you have one spot and there are several people who want to get in, then priorities have to be made. To your point, how do you apply for one of these buckets? Well, that is nothing secretive about that. You have been doing so. Students have been doing so. We have received a lot of emails of people who are in those situations, who have health concerns, toxic household, domestic abuse concerns, those who don't have connectivity. We have reached out also to students and asked them about connectivity issues. So we are very much cognizant of keeping at least a prioritized list, of which, as I mentioned earlier on, and other people have, some people will be invited. So I want to let everyone know that we are not trying to raise expectations, but we want to be very practical and pragmatic about this. This will be done in stages, and we'll only go with the next batch of 100 or 200 if we can manage the ones that we take in the first round. In total, we're not talking about more than few hundred students out of 6,000. So by and large, most people who are thinking, oh, well, my number is going to come up, it probably won't. Even if it's 1 out of 10 students, that's 600 students right there. So how do we do this? Has been explained to you again and again. Write to the counselor, write to the Office of Academic Advising, write to OSA, write to, and people are doing this. So ये process है, ये तरीका है, ये नहीं है कि बोल रहे हैं कि ये form आप fill कर दें and then we are going to simply pick names out of a hat. So we're paying attention to what students are telling us and accordingly prioritizing the list. And that's how we see it today. Now, things may change in 2 weeks. They may change in a month for better or for worse. And that's why this is a moving target. That's why you cannot have the certainty that you're asking for. कि आप exactly बताएं, exactly कब होगा. अब हम आपको बता रहे हैं, कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जितना जल्दी हो सकता है करेंगे. Within a week, we will probably have the list of 100 or 200 people that will be invited so they can come here. And then we will wait for 2 or 3 weeks before we go to round 2 and then to round 3 and so on. So this is what we are doing right now. And I hope that's clear to all the students as much as we can make it clear right now.
So we'll take a last question, and then I think Dr. Faisal Bari can also, he has his hand raised and he can also add to this. I just want to take the last question. we have all the questions, and I'll let Dr. Faisal Bari answer. So sorry. Arup, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what I've noticed so far in the meeting, more importantly, is the level of communication that is going on between the admin and the students. Now, this meeting started off with Dr. Ali Khan showing us a poster where, he asked students not to sort of like make caricatures and sort of like make these jokes about very serious issues. And that makes sense, right? But for the Dean of Student Affairs, the representative of all students right here, coming to us and shouting and screaming at us saying that aap apne paise kahin aur le jao, or matlab, just generally just this kind of like not impassionate but Tameez kind of response to all of the students here, which are 800 students, is absolutely wrong, right? Because the problem is that the admin needs to understand the empathetic concerns that the students have. People have seen their family members dying. They've seen their stipends being lost. They've seen their parents and family members losing jobs. They've seen 1,000 concerns, and the only thing that they have stagnant right now is LUMS. The only thing that they could have sort of like held on to and wanted a response from was LUMS and its admin. So for the representative of students to come out here and say something like that to me personally, where I am here listening to this meeting for 3 hours, my father, who is 62 years old, works day in day out to make sure that I come to this university, but then saying something like that to all of us students who are genuinely here trying to listen to you, respect you, is absolutely not on, because now I will never be okay with coming on my concerns to the representative of student affairs. At the same time, what some students have been very malicious, they haven't been respectful, but then again, the student body is not a monolithic block, it's not a singular entity. Some students do take it out of context, just like some admin members take it out of context and start screaming at us. Some students do that as well. But if you're going to call them impassionate, then there's no reason to call us Badtameez, entitled, or rich kids at all. That being said, I also want to raise another concern about the financial aid, where I have applied for financial aid in February and I haven't gotten a response yet. This is why we're angered. This is why we're trying to, sort of like going off the rails and sort of like not looking at our tone. That's only because I haven't gotten a response. My fee challan is due in 2 weeks, but I haven't gotten any sort of response. I've been emailing financial aid office day in, day out, but kuch is tarah ka response mujhe nahi mila. So just on that issue, I would like to tell you that we're angered because हमारे लिए 5 लाख रुपए की फीस arrange करना कोई आसान बात नहीं है. And for that, we need a response. We need you to be there for us. We need you to understand that we are going through genuine problems. We're not making it harder on you. We're just trying to voice our concerns and make sure you're listening. So please tell me when I will get my financial aid decision, because पहले जून का बोला, फिर जुलाई का बोला, अगस्त एंड का बोला, और आप बोल रहे हैं कि हम आपको semester से पहले बता देंगे. It's not easy for me to arrange my entirety of the fees in 2 days. So please tell me what they're doing about that, and please make sure that the communication from this and onwards goes a little respectful, and try not to think of the entire student body as one monolithic block. Thank you.
Can I just very quickly, because I think this is, and I hope that we have other occasions to talk back and forth, because I think that's an important thing for us to sort of really listen to each other and sort of, create this respectful communication culture that I think we need. So I think some of us, when we were responding, you're right, we shouldn't, and I don't think none of us said that all students are like this, but there have been some students who've been very disrespectful, and that the way social media has been used has been counterproductive. And also I see, and I can understand this, because it is, how it's very hard to shift our thinking if we are very much, sort of thinking on one line. And you can say that administration is guilty of the same thing, but, trying to understand our world, and we're trying to understand your world. I think for me, personally, this has been a productive dialogue, because I have seen many of the things, especially in terms of the issue of online learning and how maybe we can focus on that more. So in that sense, it's been productive. But I think that, civil dialogue involves both sides respecting certain ground rules. And I think, yes, generally people have been very respectful, but I think it's mostly in comments because people can hide behind, and when you start typing, you don't have that face-to-face interaction going on, and people say some, things that are really, inappropriate or hurtful. And so, and just one last thing, I think, so we pick up these things like, don't do tone policing. I'm sorry, that's absolutely part of the education process is to do tone policing. So this idea, and that's where this idea of entitlement, I think, was coming up, that you know, or that we pay the fee and therefore we pay tuition, and so we're going to be able to say all those things. I don't think that's, you know, it's a very complicated conversation about what students are to us. Are you customers? Are you citizens? Whatever. I think we might have some discussion about that, you know, as we move along. So anyway, I know now I'm going on because it's been 3 hours, and you know, just to sort of say, at least for me, this has been a productive exercise.
So, I just want to bring the question back. Anyone from the panel can answer it. When can, I think the main question was, when can the financial aid students expect a response? Dr. Tariq, so you can answer.
They should have been in by now. I've just started on the 15th of August. We'll find out. This is very late. I mean, if you applied in February, the answers should have come in by May, June, July at the latest, giving you at least a couple of months before the semester starts. So we'll find out from financial aid and get right back to you as soon as possible. I've been texting the financial aid office, but not heard a response, but I was unaware financial aid decisions have not gone out yet.
Yes, sir, because I think it's been a very long process, and the issue with the students is that they are fearing that if their application gets rejected, they will not have enough time to pay their fees. So I think
spot on. I mean,
I think if the students can get
certainly hearing you, and this is not acceptable.
Yeah, so I think if the students can get it by this by I don't know, next week, early next week, a response, that would be really appreciated.
And they should have some time as well.
Yep.
A window of time to make that.
Yeah, maybe they can get an extension on their fees. Thank you so much. Dr. Faisal wanted to say something. I'm so sorry, I kind of cut you off.
That's okay. We're heading towards a close. That's fine. कोई ऐसी बात नहीं. छोटे-छोटे points ही थे, but वो वैसे चले जाएंगे बाकी communications. Thank you.
Okay, so that I think we've also already 1 hour 15 minutes over our time. So I think that's it for this open house. I'm sorry if we could not get to your questions. I hope that we did end up kind of getting most of your questions and your confusions through to the administration, and you got a response. I think something that the students are asking in the chat box is whether they can get a date on the financial aid reply, because they're kind of super anxious about that.
In terms of many urgent questions that have emerged, which I'm very grateful for through this forum, and thanks everyone, including you, Abdullah, for stick handling all the information coming to you from all sides. There will be a communique to talk about when the school will open. As I mentioned only a few days ago, we have shifted the date forward by a week. So it will be September 15th. That will be confirmed. Questions about who exactly is being invited, what criteria were used, who are the people coming in, that also will be communicated back. The question about financial aid that has been raised, surprising, as Dr. Jadoon just mentioned, but we will definitely follow up on that as well ASAP. The general questions that have been raised about the thinking behind why LUMS is doing what it is doing, we will also put out in the form of, let's say, a thought piece or something in writing that affirms the convictions that have driven us to the point that we are at. Most of it was summarized by Dr. Ali Khan and also by Dr. Samia. But remember, this is a conversation that is going to continue to evolve, and we want you to participate in that conversation. The questions about your input in the decisions, I will reinforce again that students are true partners in this learning experience, not only rhetorically or because philosophically or ideologically, but practically through the governance model that we have enacted. And to echo you, Abdullah, I would encourage all the students who really want to, take their views they are so committed to and believe in by representing their fellow peers through the student elections that are going to be happening in the coming near future. I hope we look forward to our most important constituency, that students, you are not customers. And I see some on the chat box talking about this as if we are buying products from some sort of an organization that sells them. This is not what LUMS is about at all. We want you to represent students through the societies, student council in particular, but also the 40 plus societies that actually are already active, even though we are in a virtual space. So all of this, some of it will be written, a lot of it will emerge, and as facts are enough for us to be able to say, ye hamari reading hai, these things have changed, we are definitely going to stay in communication with you, and keep the comments coming, and thanks everyone.
Am I audible? Okay, so I just have one final question. There have been a lot of concerns regarding Spring 2021 by students, and they want to ask, what does Spring look like, whether there is going to be a hybrid consent-based opening, and what can we expect for Spring, and whether the administration has taken any decision. Are they in the process of finalizing what it will look like? If you guys could address that, I think we could end on that note.
Gee, have we made any decisions about Spring? Are you asking that question in terms of online learning, opening the campus, et cetera, et cetera? Is that the question?
Yes, absolutely.
Gee. So the honest truth of the matter is, no, we have not made any decisions. Our hope, our fervent hope, if I can communicate that to you with some joy, is that we completely open the campus by Spring. But that requires many other stages and many other assumptions about how things will unfold this fall. So those stages have been explained, and inshallah, if things work out, there's no reason why, if we don't open the campus, we will have a hybrid model in place so that people can opt in or opt out of coming to campus and learning, some face-to-face and others online. By the way, online learning and hybrid learning is here to stay. It's not a desperate act that is a band-aid solution to the challenges we are facing. It is in fact going to allow more flexibility to students. It's going to be something that unfortunately all of our freshman students are going to have to experience, but it will probably give them some added advantage at the end of the day after their 4 years here, where they would have had both online, hybrid, and face-to-face campus experience as well. So that's the direction we're heading in, and I hope, inshallah, by spring we will have a lot more clarity as we keep our eyes and ears to the ground.
Okay, thank you, sir. While I understand there's a lot of uncertainty given the nature of the pandemic itself, when can we expect more clear responses and decisions regarding spring? Well, by either mid-fall or maybe leading up to spring regarding opening spring 2021. Would you have some sort of a tentative time in mind that we could then follow up?
If you ask me today, just like someone asked me this question, and in fact asked all the deans and the interim provo and our trustees, all of us who are looking after LUMS were asked this question in March. Aap kab kholenge? And we waited and deliberated, thought about this, discussed with people, and came up with an answer. And the answer was, we are not opening this fall. Unambiguous answer. Before most universities did that, we took that stand. But there was a provision. The provision was, we will be monitoring the situation very carefully, and this may change. And as it has changed, we are coming to you and telling you it has changed. We are not completely closing the campus, because we've had some experience now with 500 or so people who are already on campus. As I mentioned earlier on, we have learned some lessons from there, but we are learning more lessons as we are allowed to bring students into hostels. Those lessons will be learned this fall. आपका ये जो सवाल है कि exactly कब पता लगेगा, सबसे सही, the honest answer is, we don't really know exactly कब. In fact, you know, I don't think after all this time, with all the brains in the world, with all the expertise around different parts of the globe, we have an answer to really COVID. We are speculating at best. We are working with the data that we have, and inshallah, you know, we are making progress. We have gotten somewhere. We know more than 5 months ago, but we are nowhere near the certainty that we are all looking for. Uske andar sabr is going to be a very big part of the learning process. Uske andar collaboration will be a very big part of the learning process. And uske andar ek dusre ki izzat deni hame zaruri hai. I think that's part of the theme for our discussion today. Certainly have learned a lot from that. And let's keep interacting. Let's keep meeting again. Not because of pressure, but because of the need to communicate, as earlier was mentioned by the opening remarks of Ara.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, sir, that's very valid. I think taking on from the communication point that you've stated, let's all strive to be more, let's all strive to open communication channels to our students so there's less ambiguity and they're more apprised of the situation through the administration, and even if it comes from the council, let's make sure it reaches them timely. Let's all make sure that it is more clear and unambiguous.
I take responsibility for that, and I do apologize to all students who have felt that we've done a poor communication job. That is my responsibility. I apologize for that. I will try my best, as I will encourage our team to regularly send out, even if we don't know, okay? Because what you are telling us is, kuch to bata dein hame. Dekhiye, hum batate aa rahe hain. We have been making assumptions that we've been talking to you and communicating with you, but clearly it's not been enough. And so we will strive to do more and have regular updates every 2 weeks. And some of them will be, we don't know, but we will still update you with we don't know. Theek hai?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the other panelists who joined us for this 3 hours and 30 minutes journey. I know the students still have a lot of more questions, and they might feel that some answers were vague, but we as your council promise that we will be pushing the administration on those issues and asking them for clarification and emailing you the updates on
Dog wants us to end this session now.
And just to the students, don't worry about the financial aid decisions. We will be updating you early next week. And if you all feel, as Dr. Tariq also said, that the timeline is less, we will be pushing for an extension on the fee deadline. So do not worry about that. And any other questions and queries that you may have, we will be pushing and we will be getting you the answers that you need. I am sorry if I did not get to your questions. There were a lot of questions, there were a lot of people, but I hope that we have reached some sort of better position than we were before. Thank you for all the...
Thank you, Abdullah, for doing a very good job, by the way.
Yeah,
You did a really
thank
good
you. Yes, thank you to the moderator. Great job. Great job.
Thank you, Dr. Samia and Dr. Ali, and all of the folks who participated in bringing out your points of view. It was really very important to hear your voices today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.